My name is Kevin Lahner, and I am the City Administrator for the City of Waukesha. I have with me tonight Connor Kaola from Big Top Baseball, and Vern Stedman from Big Top Baseball, and Ron Gall, our Parks Director, is floating around here as well. Just wanted to establish a couple of ground rules for the evening. We are going to operate this with the City Council rules that we have in place for this facility, and that is that we would ask that there's no yelling, applause, screaming, or anything of that nature during speakers or during while people are asking questions and that sort of thing. We really respect that. We want this to be an open discussion of important issues, and so please respect everyone's time as they ask questions and as we answer them. The format for tonight is I'm going to provide some information about the proposal. Connor and Vern are going to provide some information as well from their perspective, and then we're going to open it up for conversation and questions from the audience. So if you'd like to ask a question of anything that you see tonight, there's a form on this side table over here, and Gina will collect them, and she will call your name, and she'll create a queue for you so that you know if you're coming up next. Okay? So this is designed to be a public informational session, answer as many questions as we can as it relates to this proposal, provide as much detail as we can. So those are the ground rules for this evening. I really appreciate everyone coming out, and I just want to. I'll start with the information. So what we're talking about tonight is the White Rock Avenue redevelopment and Frame Park baseball facility improvements. And so one of the things I want to stress as I talk to folks is that this. I know that there's a lot of interest in the baseball stadium proposal, but this is a bigger project than just the baseball stadium. And it has a lot of things that are going into it, which is designed to benefit the city of Waukesha for the long term. And just as an introduction, in June of 2017, we had a discussion with the City Council. And in that discussion, there was a series of goals that were set for the upcoming years. And we're actually continuing that discussion right now with the City Council. We'll be doing some strategic planning very soon. But we came up with 7 goals in that session. And the projects that we're talking about tonight touch on 4 of the 7 of those goals that were created back in June of this year. And a couple of those goals relate to making efforts toward diversifying our mix of businesses and focus on economic development, increasing the value of the city through significant redevelopment of distressed areas. And in that discussion, the area around White Rock and East Main Street was discussed specifically between the council and myself. Continue to develop techniques to address code enforcement issues and urban blight in our community. And then continue to work with partners to encourage additional affordable homeownership options like the Dunbar Oaks project, which is located over on West Avenue. And so the project that we're talking about tonight encapsulates 4 of the 7 of those goals that we discussed with the City Council back in June. The project area in specific that we're talking about, it has several project goals. Those goals include the redevelopment of the White Rock Avenue East Main Street area to increase tax base, remove urban blight and underutilized property, to create a community asset that will continue to the city's economic success, particularly in our downtown areas, and extending some of the success that we're experiencing downtown up the street, up Main Street and into White Rock. Create a non-tax revenue for the long-term benefit of the city. Creating non-tax revenue is a particular challenge that cities face on a regular basis. We have to deal with things like revenue caps and tax caps from the state legislature that limit our ability to generate revenues. And so creative partnerships that we can do to create non-tax revenues are very important. And when we're looking at those things, we have to take those sorts of things seriously. Another project goal, preserve and enhance Frame Park and its assets that are there and the attributes of that park. And lastly, to continue to provide access to the existing users of the facility and provide opportunities for additional community events and activities. And I think that you'll see in the proposal that I lay out tonight, we encapsulate all of those goals within this project. This is a rough outline of a potential redevelopment area within the city. There are several properties within this area that are ripe for redevelopment, which means that they're either underutilized today or they are vacant or in need of serious rehab. And this is an important aspect for the city. And for those of you that have been around and have heard about the issues associated with water, one of the things that is a consequence of us getting water through the Great Lakes Compact from the city of Milwaukee is that our existing borders are locked. We cannot annex any more property within the city of Waukesha. And so one of the things that we have to do as a city is we have to maximize the value of each and every inch of property within the city to the best of our ability. And that's one of those things that we're looking at. And so the baseball is a piece of that, but there's also extensive redevelopment efforts that are needed that have to occur in order for us to increase our tax base and to continue to provide the services that we need to provide to our residents. So where are we at today? We're reviewing several redevelopment projects in this area. There's a great effort by the Habitat for Humanity within this area where they're buying existing properties and tearing them down and rebuilding brand new homes for home ownership within this area. Affordable housing being created in this immediate area. And we're finalizing the agreement for Northwoods League baseball in Frame Park. Before I go on, I just want to make a note about why this project is coming forward and recognize that I have a professional responsibility, yes, as a city administrator, to look at these things objectively, but I also bring this project forward to you as a regular Frame Park user, who one of the reasons why I relocated to this position and into this city is because of the park system that we have. We love the park system. We use Frame Park regularly. The astute observer will notice that this is the formal gardens in Frame Park. I was in Frame Park yesterday, and if you take a close look, you'll see that there are golden-eyed ducks using the open areas in the lake in Frame Park right now, which are pretty interesting birds if you're a birder to go take a look at. They're there during the winter. So, yes, I'm a city administrator, and I'm using my professional responsibility is to evaluate this objectively and get the best possible deal to the city to present to the city council to consider. But I am also a citizen and a Frame Park user as well. So let's turn back the clock a little bit and talk a little bit about the history of Frame Park and then about what's happening today before we talk about the proposal itself. So baseball is the longest standing recreational use at the park. It was actually there before the park existed. One of the things that's important to note is that one of the namesake of the park was one of the founding members of the Waukesha Diamonds, a baseball team that competed against other local teams throughout the area. He was a baseball aficionado in this area. In the 1930s, Frame Park was one of the nice ballparks in the state of Wisconsin and included grandstands and bleachers that could seat up to 2,500 people at a time. Baseball has been a fabric of the park for a very long time, since before it was a park. This is an aerial, and it's from the 40s, but this is an outline of the previous grandstand that was in Frame Park, and I've got another picture that shows a little bit better from a different perspective. So there was grandstands in Frame Park for many years, and it hosted baseball since before it was even a park. During World War II, the Milwaukee Brewers, who were a minor league franchise at the time, held spring training camp in Frame Park, and they held exhibition games at the facility. The St. Louis Cardinals in the 1950s used Frame Park for tryouts for professional players. This is a really interesting picture. This is the Brewers catcher hitting his second homer of the game in 1944 against the University of Wisconsin. Both home runs ended up in the Fox River, according to the caption. But if you look, you can look behind the catcher and the batter, and you can see the grandstands behind there in the bleacher areas that were there at that time. So let's talk about today and what's been happening more recently. So in 1990s, the Fox River Corridor Plan was approved, and the city, along with corporate sponsors and private donors, constructed the Riverwalk and made improvements to Frame and Bethesda Park. At that time, and it continues into today, the vision was for Frame Park to become a center for community events and festivals, and it has hosted community events and festivals for the entire life it's been in existence. It's 34.5 acres. What we know as the boundary of Frame Park today was 9 different properties that were purchased or donated that make up the area around Frame Park. So there were several properties that were purchased and others that were donated that make up that 34 acres today. There are 3 permanent buildings. There are a private vendor that rents kayaks, paddle boats, and paddle boards. And there are active uses in the park, and there have always been active and passive uses in the park since it became a park. So those include baseball, obviously, volleyball, bicycling, playgrounds, and kayak and boating. And the passive uses have include fishing, walking trails, the formal gardens, the Hobo Springs, which is a historical site for the city, and other uses. And so passive and active uses have existed together within that park ever since it was created back in the late 20s, early 30s. Since 1982, Fiesta Waukesha has been held in Frame Park, drawing thousands of visitors over the 3-day weekend. Oktoberfest began in 2016. Jamboree next weekend is occurring, with some of the events occurring in Frame Park. Trailbaker Marathon, the Riverwalk for breast cancer, the Badgerland ski shows occur in Frame Park during the summer, and National Night Out, a city festival sponsored in Frame Park, where if you're lucky, you can get some of the mayor's barbecue for nothing. So let's talk about some basics of the proposal as it relates specifically to the baseball field, and then I'll let these guys talk a little bit more. So basically, we're talking about a 20-year use agreement, a public-private partnership between the city of Waukesha and Big Top Baseball. 2,500 fixed seats that would be created as part of that, hospitality space, a digital outfield fence, indoor restrooms, concession space, retail office space, a full turf playing field, grass berms, dugouts, fencing, and press box. And the thing that I want to impress upon folks is that this is largely within the current footprint of the existing baseball field. None of the other uses within the park will be impacted by the project. It extends the boundaries slightly, up to 9%, but the walking trails are not impacted. The formal gardens are not. The amphitheater, the playground. We preserve the existing uses in the park, and actually the project itself creates an enhancement and additional opportunities to open up the park for public use. The baseball team would hold up to 40 games per year. They would host some level of soccer as part of the contract. And some of the provisions that are in the lease include an alcohol serving plan, scheduling meetings with user groups as well as the city, and a comprehensive parking plan. And I know there's a lot of interest in the parking, and I'm going to let these guys talk about that a little bit later. Carroll, Waukesha North, Waukesha South, and the current user of the facility would continue to play there. They've given priority within the use agreement between the city and Big Top Baseball. Current city events would continue to be preserved within the project. And so Frame Park, the baseball field today, is a limited use facility. You have to get a permit from the Parks Department to go out and get it. There were 73 baseball games played at that facility last year. That includes mostly is Carroll, Waukesha North, Waukesha South. I'm told there was one CMH game there and a couple other users. But largely, it's a reserved use facility. You just can't grab your buddies and go and play a game on Frame Park. And it's been that way for a very long time. You have to reserve it through the Parks Department in order to use it. The proposal that we're presenting tonight would preserve those existing uses and provide additional opportunities for public use. So from a financial perspective, Big Top would provide $500,000 up front and $150,000 per year as a base amount for their lease. They would contribute $25,000 to non-baseball improvements within the park. So they would contribute those to our parks fund that we could use for capital improvements. We could save them up and use them on a big project. We could use them the year that we receive them. We could partner with them to do a project as well. There would be additional, if there were additional events above our base amount within the lease, there'd be $2,000 fee. And the city would fund approximately $3.8 to $4.2 million up front as part of the deal. The lease payments plus redevelopment within the area would cover the debt expense to the city. And there's a couple of key things that we need that folks need to understand. We're using a tool called a tax instrument financing district to help fund for these improvements. And I'm going to spend a little bit on tax financing district 101. I'm not going to bore you. It's something that we have to use within the city for economic development purposes. And the way a tax agreement finance district works is that you establish a boundary, like the area that I showed you with the red line before, and there's a base value for that property. The base value of that property, the taxes generated from that property continue to go to the school district, the county, the city, and the technical college districts. Okay? New development within that area is used for improvements. And so new development creates new value, and those combined tax dollars are used to fund improvements within a tax increment finance district. So no general fund dollars are going into the project. The city will spend more tax dollars on Frame Park, general fund tax dollars on Frame Park over the next 20 years without the deal than with the deal that's being proposed to the city council. There'll be more tax dollars going into that facility without the deal than with the deal. And we can create, through this agreement, non-tax dollars for the continued maintenance and improvements of Frame Park. That's the type of thing that is a public-private partnership that benefits everyone, the city, the folks I'm working with here tonight. Again, thank you for coming out. This is our public involvement plan. We may add or move some of these, but right now, these are the scheduled meetings. So you're here. I don't have to talk to you about that. We have a scheduled Finance Committee meeting on January 30th at 6:30. We may add another one or move that to another date. We have another public information meeting at 6:30 on Monday, February 5th. On February 19th, there's a Park Recreation and Forestry Board meeting, and as currently scheduled, February 22nd for the City Council. So these are all opportunities for you to learn more about this project. Want to talk a little bit about the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. This has been an issue that's been raised. We received $28,000 in change in 1973 to build some trails and to make some improvements along the shore in Frame Park. And we are working with the DNR to meet those grant requirements. There's a provision within those grant requirements that we have to meet, and DNR is the entity that reviews those requirements. And so we have two possible paths. We can work with them to get approval for what we're asking to do, or we can do what's called a conversion. And a conversion is, for lack of a better description, a bureaucratic process that the DNR will facilitate, which moves the grant application from one location to another. The city happens to have an undeveloped park, Meadowview Park, where we have plans to do improvements in 2018 that meet those grant requirements. And so it's quite possible that we could simply move those grant requirements to the other park and meet the grant. There's some advantages to that, and there's some disadvantages to that. So that's the issue with the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. There are some provisions within the grant that the DNR has raised concern about, and we have two paths forward that we're discussing with them. And I would just like to say the DNR has been a great partner in this discussion. They've been open. We've had a good discussion with them throughout the course of the project. So just really quickly, how will this project be successful? It's going to be successful if it's financially viable. We have a good financial plan that I think is going to work for the city in the long term. It's going to create a long-term asset to Frame Park. The city has a long history of creating assets that add to the value of Frame Park, that add to the experience for the park user. And we're asking the council to consider that again. Spurs economic activity. This is another of those goals where the project, taken as a whole, helps encourage more economic activity. Things like creating visitors to the community that will visit our restaurants in downtown and our shops in downtown, creating a tourist attraction that others don't have. And it's important to note that this market in general is one of the few that doesn't have a Northwoods League team. And within the next few years, if it's not going to be in Waukesha, it's going to be in another community around us. It's going to be in Pewaukee or Brookfield or Oconomowoc or somewhere else. We have a great opportunity to have it here in the city of Waukesha. And again, lastly, it preserves the Frame Park experience for the entire community. We believe that we've created a proposal that meets those goals. And just real briefly, this is about family-friendly entertainment in the park. It's about attracting new users to the park from a wide swath of demographics. Families and kids is a huge attraction. Also, millennials are a huge attraction. I noticed in some of the marketing material where the folks behind me have a successful franchise in Kenosha. Their facility was voted the #1 place on a first date, which I think would speak to the millennial population, and the #1 place for a family-friendly outing. And so I think that you hit two great populations that would be coming to our park, enjoying our facilities, and experiencing what Waukesha has to offer. This is the Kenosha facility. This is an aerial of Kenosha facility. It's a very similar in size and scope of what's being proposed in Waukesha. And I just wanted to point out that it's in a very similar place. There's even a railroad track alongside it. There are residences that are near it and other uses that are around it. Again, it fits into the fabric of that community. The folks in Kenosha love the Kingfish franchise. They own it. One of the anecdotes that I heard while on our tour when we were in the retail shop is that they had to get rid of everything that didn't say Kenosha on it. Well, not everything, but most things that didn't say Kenosha on it. The things that say Kenosha on it within the retail shop are the ones that sell the most in Kenosha. They have welcomed that team in their community. This is a facility in Wisconsin Rapids. Again, largely a residential area as well. And this is how it looks in Frame Park. So very similar facilities. Public-private partnerships have brought those projects forward, and they've been successful, and they've been successful in communities throughout the state of Wisconsin. Just real briefly, folks that have these Northwoods League franchises in the state of Wisconsin love them. Wausau There are literally houses directly across the street from this stadium in Wausau, and they talk about how it's been a great part of the fabric of their community. Fond du Lac, again, have talked about how it's a great part of their community. La Crosse has been there for a very long time. They view that franchise as a tremendous community asset. And Mequon, which the partners are a part owner of that as well. Again, talk about how the project helps to build community. And so the folks that have done this before have been telling us that it is a great asset to their community, that they've been successful, and that they would welcome them, and that we should welcome them into our community as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Connor and Vern and let them present some additional information.
Hello.
Thank you, Kevin. My name is Connor Kaloya. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Big Top Baseball. My partner, Vern Stedman, is the President of Big Top Baseball. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is great to see a lot of people here. We're excited to do a couple things. First of all, we're excited to tell you a little bit more about our background and kind of our vision for Frame Park. But more importantly, we're here to hear from you. We want to answer your questions. We want to engage. We want there to be dialogue. We have great respect for the park. We think it's a beautiful park and the most unique place in the community to put a Northwoods League franchise. And we have great respect for all opinions. We understand that not everybody here tonight agrees with our vision. And we're more than happy to hear those comments, sit down with people one-on-one, and see what we can do to work together to develop an idea and a vision and a stadium that work for everybody in this room. So our company is Big Top Baseball. We own and operate 4 Northwoods League franchises across the state. We're the largest ownership group in summer collegiate baseball. We started in Madison 18 years ago. Our second franchise was Wisconsin Rapids about 8 years ago. And then 4 years ago, we simultaneously started the franchise in Kenosha while we purchased the franchise in Green Bay. Last year, our group hosted 200 events across the state of Wisconsin, drew over 550,000 people to our events. In addition to the 4 Northwoods League franchises that we own, we're also in the event business. We run the City of Madison's summer fireworks show. We shut down a mile of state highway for 24 hours and put on the state's largest fireworks show. And then we also operate Breeze Stevens Field. It's an old historic facility in downtown Madison where we host concerts, do community events, soccer, football, and all kinds of other types of events. So a little bit about our franchises. Madison, like I mentioned, we've been there for 18 years. We lead the nation in attendance, average a little over 6,300 fans per night. We have a great thing going in Madison. We're very fortunate. If you compare us to any minor league team in the country, we rank in the top 10%. With that being said, we're not looking to bring that stadium, that experience to Frame Park. What happens in Madison wouldn't work here in Frame Park, and that's not what we're proposing or what we're discussing or what we're even thinking about. What we think would be more appropriate for the community and more appropriate for the park would be something more similar to our operation in Kenosha. We started in Kenosha 4 years ago. We have 2,144 seats. We average about 2,500 fans per night. We sold out 33 of our 36 games last year. We rank in the top 6 in the nation in attendance. We've had great success with that franchise since we started. Wisconsin Rapids is the smallest market in the 20-team Northwoods League, yet every year we rank in the top half in attendance. We've been there for 8 years, going into our 9th year, and have really been embraced by the community there in the small town of Wisconsin Rapids. And as I mentioned, we purchased the team in Green Bay 4 years ago. It was struggling prior to us taking it over. We've been able to take it from 0 sellouts to selling out 17 of our 36 games in the last 3 years. And finally, Breeze Stevens Field. Just a quick story about Breeze Stevens Field. And Kevin mentioned that last year there were 73 baseball games at Frame Park. Prior to us taking over Breeze Stevens Field in 2015, there was 38 events and about 8,000 people that came through that facility. Just this past year, we've been running the facility now for 2 years. This past year, we hosted 186 events and had 80,000 people through the gates. So our background and what we've done and what we'd be looking to do would be to get people utilizing the park and do it in a way that works with the neighbors and works with everybody involved to get more use of the park and get more people engaged using the park and enjoying it on a daily basis.
So I want to talk a little bit about our group and our background and really why we do what we do. I think, some people have expressed a concern that we're this big business coming in. Connor and I started in baseball in the Northwoods League as interns. I was 19 years old. Connor was 20 years old. And we both had this vision of climbing the ranks and going on and maybe working in the big leagues or something like that. And what presented itself was a really unique opportunity in the minor league baseball and family entertainment world, where we were able to work our way through the ranks of the Northwoods League and create some interesting partnerships. And Waukesha is the same thing. So we're kind of taking, we took a path, both of us, where we started out as unpaid interns and climbed the ladder to become partners in the ownership of baseball teams. It's really been a fun thing, and it's very different than like the Milwaukee Brewers. Of course, you're not going to, as a 20-year-old intern, aspire to one day partner with Mark Attanasio and be a partner in the Milwaukee Brewers. So we've gone out and worked hard to build the business that we've built, and we're really proud of it, and we're proud of the opportunities we create for young people. Each one of our teams is run by a general manager that is based in the community, that becomes really the integral face of our franchise. And Connor and I have gone through those times, and we really pride ourselves on developing young people and providing them their first opportunity in a lot of cases to go out and prove themselves in the sports world. That said, this ownership group is a little bit different. The teams that we currently own are owned by myself, Connor, and Steve Schmidt, who's listed on here. Steve owns the Shoebox in Black Earth, Wisconsin, the largest shoe store in the Midwest. In Waukesha, we would be joined by Jim Kazmarek, who owns Capco, a metal stamping company based out of Grafton. He's the majority owner of the Lakeshore Chinooks that play on the campus of Concordia University. And he's a guy he's also a minority partner, owns 5% of the Milwaukee Bucks. And so he's got a guy that's got a little bit more of a connection to this part of the world than we do, and an interest in continuing to build baseball in the community, that he's a part of here. Members of our group own 5 of the 20 teams in the Northwoods League then, when we add Jim into the mix. We've won 4 out of the last 5 Northwoods League championships. So, we're baseball first, for sure. We're really proud of the great baseball that we've turned out over the years, and we know how to win baseball games. And it's a competitive league. It's not easy to win on a consistent basis in this league. So we know how to do that part of it pretty well, and combined to bring about 60 years of experience to the operation. 2018 is the 25th year of the Northwoods League. The Northwoods League is really the premier amateur baseball league in the summer in the country. We take the best college baseball players from around the entire country, so we'll have players on a roster from Stanford to the University of Florida, who won the national championship last year, to the University of Illinois. Maybe Carroll would even have a player possibly on a roster. And we bring all these guys together in the summer. They play 72 games in about 76 days, so it's a lot of baseball. It's really kind of a baseball internship for these guys. You find out quickly if you have the right type of player that's going to potentially have a professional future. Pretty much every Northwoods League game would be attended by at least 1 or 2 major league scouts, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on who's playing on a given night. But these guys are legitimate prospects. Over 181 players have started their careers in the Northwoods League and gone on to play in the big leagues. Eric Thames right now with the Milwaukee Brewers is one of the more prominent names with the Brewers, at least. Chris Sale, Max Scherzer, who won the Cy Young Award last year, is an alumni of the Northwoods League. And so we've put out some really top-level baseball with the league. Waukesha would be the 11th team in the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin has treated the Northwoods League very well. It's been something where, lacrosse, for instance, draws maybe 2,700 fans a night, I think, right now. Lacrosse is almost the same as in St. Cloud, Minnesota, demographically and population-wise. The team in St. Cloud, Minnesota, draws about 1,500 fans a night. The Northwoods League has really resonated well in the Northwoods League. I think the combination of affordable family entertainment, high-level baseball, and the great sports fans that we have here in the state of Wisconsin have combined to make it a unique thing. And all of our players would live with host families in the community. This has been another nice part that's different from professional baseball, like the team in Beloit or the team in Appleton, the Timber Rattlers. Those guys are all professionals, and our players all stay with host families. So we normally have a 30-man roster, so 30 families in a given community would take a player from our roster in to their home for the summer, and they really become part of the family and part of the community through that connection. And I think I'll turn it over to Connor on the Waukesha.
Yeah, so so a couple things, and Kevin mentioned earlier, but if you look at the footprint of the Northwoods League, going from the Dakotas to Michigan up to Canada, the premier market in the league footprint that does not have a Northwoods League franchise is west of Milwaukee. And when you look at our different opportunities, different potential places to put a team, we think Waukesha is really the place you want to be for a variety of reasons. One, Frame Park is a great location, close to a downtown, but also at the same time close to the highway, easy for people to get to across the region. We think this is definitely, while it'll be based here in Waukesha, we definitely view it as a regional thing. And if it doesn't happen here, it's going to happen in the next 5 years somewhere else. We were one of 3 groups bidding with the Northwoods League to get this franchise. We were able to secure that with the Northwoods League, and there's interest to do this in this area. And if it doesn't happen in the city, it will happen somewhere else in the near future.
And I think an interesting thing about Waukesha, and Kevin kind of touched on it with his comments about Kenosha and the similarities we see. Kenosha is a very similarly sized community to Waukesha. It's growing. It's got some energy. And in that community, it didn't have quite an identity. There wasn't the thing that you really pointed to when you thought of Kenosha. They had been an auto-making community for a long time. That industry left. And it's funny, when we look at the different teams we operate in, these different communities around the state, there's a lot of interesting things to be learned. One of them is that in Madison, for instance, with the Mallards, we are the most successful summer collegiate team in the country. We're proud as we can possibly be of that. Draw 6,300 fans a night in our stadium that seats 6,700 people. It's cool. We're not the Wisconsin Badgers. We never will be in that community. We're always going to be second or third or fourth, probably, to their basketball and football and hockey and all those great things that they do in that community. And that's fine. We own summertime in that community in Madison, and that's all right. And we do just. In Kenosha, we are the Badgers. We are the biggest thing happening from an athletics perspective in that community. We think we have an opportunity to do that kind of thing with Waukesha. We think we have an opportunity to really provide a unique piece of this community that's something that people are going to rally behind and get excited about. Kevin's story about people, all they wanted to buy was stuff that said Kenosha on it. Like if we just put the team logo without the word Kenosha on it, nobody would buy that shirt. And we found out quickly if we put the word Kenosha on it, it sold, but that really told us a more interesting story, we thought, about community. And what these things are really about is a unique opportunity for people to come back together and see their neighbors and see their friends. And we think that, this is going to be something that could fit nicely into the fabric of summer in the Waukesha community.
So as we get into the next part of our proposal, we kind of want to talk about a couple things. Over the last few months, there's been a lot of information out there, and not all of it is correct. So we'd like to take the opportunity just to kind of, I think there's some confusion, some misinformation out there. We want to take the opportunity to just kind of clarify a few things and talk about the actual specifics and details of our proposal.
So the first thing we've heard a lot about is, comparison to our team in Madison. Again, we're really proud of what's happened in Madison. We never want to have another Madison Mallards. We don't want it in Waukesha. We don't want it anywhere. It's big. It's difficult to manage. It's a lot of work. We love it, and it's great, but we found that we prefer to actually, as we move forward, to build smaller facilities. We think that's a better experience for our fans. We think it's more intimate. It's closer to the game. We've found that in the places that we've done that we've actually created better fans that come to more games and are really more connected to the brand that we're bringing out there. We are proposing a 2,500 fixed-seat stadium with a total capacity not to exceed 4,000. That would include grass seating berms, some hospitality spaces, and some standing room probably as well. And so that's the highest that we want to do for any athletic use, basically, at the facility. And I think that this picture here shows The black line that you can kind of see on here outlines Simmons Field. So that's the seating area and the baseball field at Simmons dropped over Frame Park. And it's, I think, shocking to me, having spent a lot of time at Simmons Field and a little bit of time now at Frame Park as we look at this project, that everything that we have going at Simmons Field fits comfortably into the outlines of Frame Park today. And so we're used to operating in you know, a space similar to what Frame Park has available to work within. And then the next thing that I think is important to note is our intent for the use of the overall park. We understand that Frame Park is beautiful, and something that makes it an appealing place to go are those things. And we have no interest in modifying or changing anything outside of the footprint of the baseball stadium. As we kind of have shown here, the yellow space, the yellow outline shows the existing approximate square foot or outline of Frame Park, and the black line on the left-hand side of that image shows the space that we'd be hoping to grab onto to have additional space for traffic flow inside the stadium. It's no more than approximately a 10% addition to the square footage that the baseball facility is currently taking up. We do not get any closer than about 240 feet from the formal gardens in the right field corner, basically back here. And there's actually a light pole back here already that's a little bit beyond the footprint that we actually would intend to use, but you know, it's really part of the field. And so that point is about 240 feet from the formal gardens. And you know, just to underline it again, the proposal and the improvements are exclusive to the baseball diamond. We have no interest in expanding beyond that.
A couple other things too to mention: that the bike path will be untouched.
Yeah.
The Rotary building will be untouched in the amphitheater. That all stays as is. We're really focusing just on improvements to the baseball field and want to limit any disruption to the rest of the park. There's concern out there that this will no longer be a public park. Frame Park has always been and will always be a public park. There were 73 games you played there a year ago, and under this proposal, in the installation of artificial turf, we believe that we can significantly increase that to get more people engaged, not just from a baseball perspective, but also from a soccer perspective, potentially lacrosse and other sports as well. On top of that, part of our proposal is that we would have 12 community use days. So on 12 days for at least 3 hours, we'd open the doors and it'd be open to the public to use any way they wanted. If you wanted to come kick a soccer ball, hit a baseball, throw a football, but it would be open to the public. And as of now, Frame Park does not have these open use days. In order to use the baseball field at Frame Park, you have to book a reservation. Moving forward, we would take reservations for scheduled events, but once a month, and we probably wouldn't do it during the winter months, but 12 times a year, 3 hours a time, open to the community, come on in, use it any way you want. This is a public park. We want to continue it being a public park. The other thing to mention, and I talked about Reese Stevens just the last 2 years, in our management of that facility, we've been able to significantly increase the number of users and then also increase the number of events at the facility. Another thing to talk about. There's been some concern about a private business coming into Frame Park. There's currently other private businesses operating in the park, and across the state and across the Northwoods League, this is a common thing. 7 of the 9 Wisconsin teams in the Northwoods League play in public parks. They play in municipally owned public parks. The other 2 play on private college campuses. But what we're proposing here is happening across the state, and we wouldn't be the first private business to be operating in a public park here in Waukesha. And then Kevin talked about this as well, but our proposed use of bringing baseball to the park, amateur baseball to the park, would not be inconsistent with the prior use of the park. Kevin mentioned that the namesake of the park, Andrew Frame, actually was involved with the Waukesha Diamonds. There's been professional baseball there. It used to be a grandstand of 2,500 seats. Baseball's been played there for over 100 years. Now, with our proposal, I know there's previously pro baseball played there. This would be exclusively amateur baseball between the Northwoods League, Waukesha South, Waukesha North, Carroll, and other youth groups using the field. And then one other point to talk about, there's been a lot of comments that this could work and many other parks throughout the city. And unfortunately, we've done our due diligence. We've met extensively with the city and looked at other options. And for a couple reasons, this doesn't work. First of all, there's infrastructure at Frame Park. There's lights, there's netting, there's the footprint of a field, a lot of things that we can build off of. If you just went into a clean park and open space, it would cost 2.5 times the proposed price of this project to start from scratch and build a Northwoods League facility. And the other reason that it doesn't work is that in order for this to work for the city, there needs to be an economic development element to it. In this location, this facility does that. There's an opportunity for the city to generate additional revenue through economic development in the neighborhood. Last couple things, there's a lot of talk that this is taxpayer dollars. Kevin mentioned previously as well that this is a tax increment financing. Our group would contribute $3.5 million over the term of the lease. Between our contributions and money being generated from additional economic development in the area, the current projection over the 20 years is that this project would cash flow positively over the next 20 years. And then there's also been discussion that 10 years ago when this was proposed, that this got voted down by the council. There was actually a 10-4 vote. This has already been proposed and approved once. And the reason it did not happen 10 years ago is that gentleman at the time that proposed it did not really have a background doing this and also did not have the financing. We've been vetted thoroughly by the city, and we have both the background experience and the financing to move forward with this if this is approved.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual design of the stadium. We've done a lot of projects very similar to this over the last few years, from a rebuild of our stadium in Madison to our project in Kenosha. Our project in Kenosha actually won a national award from ballparkdigest.com that is kind of the industry standard for people that work in the baseball world. When we rebuilt that stadium in 2014, we won the award for the best ballpark renovation in the entire country in 2014. So we've done it. We've learned a lot about how to do it right. And we think that any ballpark starts, of course, with the setting. And as we've discussed, the opportunity to possibly pursue a facility in Frame Park is unparalleled. I think that this can become maybe one of the most unique baseball facilities in the entire state. The opportunity to interact with water, of course, is a very obvious one that we think would be fun for our fans. You know, we envision people out there in kayaks tracking down home run balls. We think that'd be fun and something that people would talk about and get excited about. We love the trails, the ability to possibly out in left field figure out a way for those bike trails and pedestrian trails to interact with the facility and create some viewing spaces out there, something that's actually happened at the Major League Baseball level with the San Francisco Giants in their stadium, where people walking along the ocean can actually come into the Major League Stadium for up to 15 minutes and watch a baseball game for free. We want to do something similar in left field. We have no interest, again, in modifying any of the bike paths or touching them in any way. But can we invite those people in to the stadium in some way and let them kind of have an opportunity to have a unique stop along their journey to wherever they might be going, assuming it's not coming to a game? We think that's a cool thing that is a unique to this location, unique to this community, and really unique throughout the entire state of Wisconsin and beyond. And as you kind of walk through the rest of the stadium, in left field, we would have a grass seating berm, probably for a capacity of 400 to 500 people on a given night. Grass, great area for families to roll out a blanket and sit with their kids and watch a game. I love sitting in these areas with my family. I have a 10 and a 6-year-old at home, and this is the spot that my family enjoys watching a baseball game from. We want to think a little bit about everyone. Our stadiums will have something for everyone. We don't want to just focus on kids. We're going to have something for kids for sure, but we're going to have something for that baseball enthusiast that the number one reason they want to come is to sit behind home plate and overhear the scouts talking about the star of the player on the field that night. We want to create that experience. We want to create experiences for companies to be able to do private parties. We want to have something that's going to be an affordable ticket package for kind of the Joe fan to come out and enjoy a game and everything in between. And we're going to be super versatile with how we do those things. So as you go behind home plate, the idea would be to have a concrete seating bowl, probably made out of Spancrete, a good Waukesha product here, of course. That would have major league quality stadium seats with armrests and cup holders and a folding seat, nice amount of leg room. We try to build our stadiums with a little extra leg room. The tight footprint might adjust that or impact that a little bit. We'd have 2 concession buildings with restrooms in them behind home plate. One on the first base side, one on the third base side. The one on the first base side ends up being a touch bigger because that's probably where our team office is and a potential retail store would be located. They're basically 2-story buildings. However, one of the nice features of the natural landscape at Frame Park, as I'm sure you know, is that the baseball field's about 6 feet lower than the actual parking lot is, which allows us to kind of recess those buildings, especially on the first base side, down about a half a story below. So actually, you're only really going to see an exposure for about 1.5 stories of what we would build. But we still get the impact of really having the amenities that a modern baseball facility would really need and require. Another really interesting feature, we think, is trying to tie it into the interesting history and the architecture of the community. One piece that we've heard a lot about as we came into the community was the spring house. The grandstand cover behind home plate is meant to evoke that feeling and that look. It's not meant to be a replica in any way, but it is supposed to be reflective of that style of architecture and something that we feel is consistent with the overall look and feel of that entire park that would work really nicely. In right field, we would have a party space for companies and private outings that would be basically right behind the right field wall and kind of wrap around the right field corner in general terms. I think another kind of interesting feature that we would be proposing for this facility is how we would do the scoreboard at the outfield wall. There's an existing scoreboard there today. Our intent would be to continue to use that scoreboard that is there today. And we would, instead of doing a traditional outfield wall that you've seen at all kinds of baseball stadiums, we would actually make the entire outfield wall digital. And the nice thing there is it allows us to, on games that are, or on days that the team is not there, to turn it off. And so I know a lot of people are concerned about over-commercializing the Frame Park and having all these signs visible all the time that are going to not look great. We don't want that either. And in fact, what we would do is when, during events, we would turn on the outfield wall and we'd have prominent signage, certainly, for our advertisers and our partners. We'd also use it for part of our game presentation and kind of have the fun video board stuff that you might see at a major league game. But instead of building a 40, 50-foot tall board, we're just going to put it right in the outfield wall. We think that's more in keeping with the concerns that the neighbors have already expressed to us about views of the river and things like that. We want to celebrate the river. The last thing in the world we want to do is obstruct anyone's view of the river. We want to bring that into our park as much as we possibly can and make it something that's an interesting piece that really drives the fan experience.
A couple other notes quickly on the design. One, we learned a lot from this process 10 years ago, so we've taken a lot of that feedback into account, keeping the stadium as low as possible, keeping the seating bowl low and close to the facility. A couple other things that we've learned. One, we want to make sure that the facade of the structure ties into the surrounding park. We want to do our best to preserve any sight lines from White Rock, to preserve the sight lines of the Fox River and the rest of the park. That's why the proposed facility has such a low profile. And Vern mentioned, any other Northwoods League park these days has a massive video board towering over the field. That's not a part of our proposal and proposed plan. So as far as the usage in the field users, Waukesha North, South, and Carroll all play there. They would all continue to play there. There'd be no disruption in their schedule. We've met with each of them. We continue to work with them to accommodate them, make sure their games have priority. The majority of the 73 games played this past year were those 3 teams. We'd want to preserve that. Their seasons work well with ours. We've met with them, and our schedules can coexist. In all of our facilities across the state, we coexist with other high school teams, college teams. For example, our facility in Kenosha hosts over 180 baseball games a year. We play only 36 of those. So we like the idea. It's a community facility. We want to continue to coexist and work with those community teams. And the last thing to kind of touch on is parking. I know parking is a concern. Candidly, in all of our facilities, parking is a concern. And if you're at a facility where people want to be, parking is always going to be a challenge. And we're very confident with our background, what we've been able to do in the other markets. We've got the experience to sufficiently manage parking here. A couple things. First of all, in the park, we'll reserve spaces in the park for general park users. We'll reserve spaces in the park for those going to an event at the Rotary Building, and spaces in the park for any guests at the Schutze Building. So that'll come first. The park parking lot will have staff, signage. We'll work hard to ensure that anybody that wants to just be a general park visitor or visit the Schutze Building or the Rotary Building will be able to do so. We've identified over 1,000 off-street spots in the neighborhood. So those are off-street spots, not spots on-street, off-street spots. We work in all of our other facilities with local business owners, nonprofits. We secure their lots, we staff their lots, we park cars in their lots, we provide insurance for their lots, and we clean them after every event. That's something we're confident we'll be able to do here. Like I said, every market that we're in, we have parking challenges. Candidly, out of the 5 facilities we operate, there's 2 or 3 that are a lot more challenging than this one, and we've successfully been able to manage that with both our neighbors and with the city. Keep in mind, too, that our proposal cannot move forward without an approved parking plan from the city. The city council would have to approve any parking plan.
And as we identify challenges like parking, our history and our track record has shown a consistent ability on our side to understand those problems that come up from the discussions like we're going to have here tonight that we've been having for the last several weeks with people around the community. We want to respond, and we want to find common ground, and we want to work with the community to address these things. We talked about parking. One of my proudest stories, one of our proudest stories, I think, as a company is our team in Kenosha. They were really concerned about parking. Kenosha parking is probably a little bit worse, honestly, than what we would be, potentially inheriting at Frame Park. And as we came into our first summer, the city council was pushing us on it. The community was pushing us on it. And, we decided to turn it into a positive. The name of our team is the Kingfish. We play off the Elvis the King feel quite a bit with that team. The name of our mascot is actually Elvis, and he wears a white jumpsuit from time to time. And actually, if you ever go to a Kingfish game in Kenosha, you'll find on the streets on Sheridan as you come in, you'll find on a given night 8 to 10 of our employees dressed up as Elvis, pointing people to the right place to park. Connor, you got the. We took parking and made it fun. In fact, one night our employees weren't dressed correctly, and we got complaints the next day from our fans saying, "Hey, I didn't see the Elvis or the Elvi, I suppose, out on the street directing traffic." And at the end of the year, we did a survey. And I think 85% of our fans surveyed thought our parking service... 93? Yeah. Sorry. 93% said our parking options and service was above average or beyond what they expected. And we're proud of that. And to this day, the city council in that community, who's very responsive to their community, just like the city council is here, hasn't even asked us about parking because they've understood that there is a way to handle it, and we've got a good model on how to do it. So with that said, I think that we want to...
Yeah, one last thing. Our contact information's here, our cell phone number, email. We want this to be a collaborative process. If there's concerns, if there's things we can address, we want to sit down. We've already started that process with a handful of people in the neighborhood. We want to sit down with you. We want to see if we can address your concerns. This is how we've had success in our other markets. If our neighbors are not happy, there's no chance of us having success. So I want to thank everybody for coming out here tonight, and we're excited to open up the questions and continue the dialogue.
Yeah, just a reminder about protocol. So if you would like to ask a question, we're here. We'll stay as long as folks want us to stay. Gina has a timer, so we can get through as many questions as possible. And so fill out a form. She'll call you up, and we'll go proceed. And again, just a reminder that we're following Common Council rules. So please hold applause or other notes of affirmation as you go through. So Gina is going to call the first person. Yeah, if there's anybody else that wants to sign up, please continue to do so. And then we'll call the first person and have a little bit of a queue, and then we'll go from there. So.
Okay, so I'll call who's up and then who's on deck, so you have an idea that you're next. If for some reason you no longer wish to speak, if your question was answered, just let me know that when I call on you. Okay? Thank you. So first up is Skip Dexter. And on deck is Amy Gradecki, and I apologize if I mispronounce any of these names. Thank you. And if you could state your name.
Appreciate it.
Your name, please, and your address.
Yes, Skip Dexter, 1402 Mohican Trail. How much time do I get? I've never been to one of these.
You will be given 3 minutes.
Okay.
And what I'll do is when you're down to 30 seconds, I'll call that so you know that, and then I'll call time.
Okay. I have a comment, and I do have one lingering question that maybe I missed it along the way. But you mentioned a couple of times the commercialization of our parks is a sensitive topic, as it should be. There's an emotional connection, whether it's a city park, a county park, a state park, national park. There's currently some controversy in California about Yosemite is fighting. They're going through the Starbucks wants to come into Yosemite National Park, which on the surface sounds crazy, right? Where they're going to plop a Starbucks into one of the most treasured parks. But then when you start to get into the details, you understand that it's a space that's already occupied by somebody else who sells coffee. They're just going to put Starbucks into that distributor. So I think it's important to understand all of the details of what goes into it. As a former employee of the national parks at Yellowstone and Grand Canyon, I got to experience some of the commercialization. I was actually part of a for-profit hospitality group that operated there a long time ago before I had kids. And when it's done right, it can be really cool. It can be really special. When it's done wrong, it can look like the spaceship of the pro football team down in Chicago that was landed a few years ago. So I've been to a Chinooks game. My kids have run the minnow race there. I spent Father's Day there. My boys have done the baseball clinic in Madison. Really enjoyed that. So I think we could be onto something really special. Something I'd like to know, though, is you had mentioned you're both unpaid interns when you started. Could you talk about the jobs that come with this baseball club, and are any of them paid? And then, honestly, I know there's...
We won't date ourselves, but it was a long time ago we intern, and we don't do unpaid interns anymore. So all the interns are paid. But good question. Economic development, another economic development question. This franchise, Vern mentioned, we have a full-time general manager as a part of the community, and then create anywhere between 12 and 14 full-time year-round jobs, and about 250 seasonal employees. And that's the start. That could grow over time, but you know, as we look at our initial plans to roll out both for baseball, in soccer and other events, we're talking 12 to 14 full-time equivalent employees and 250 seasonal employees.
Very cool. Thanks, guys.
And one thing on the seasonal employees too, you know, in all of our markets, especially, you know, one area I like to talk about, the north side of Madison. The stadium's located on the north side, and we've got about 400 employees with the Mallards. About every year we hire about 150 high school students, new high school students. For so many 14-year-olds, we're their first job. We're their first work experience, their first chance to get out. It's a good job for 14-year-olds because it's not 7 days a week or 5 days a week. It's a couple games here, a couple games there. We love the idea that we can connect with all ages from an employee standpoint. We've got a ton of 14, 15, 16-year-olds. Then we also have a lot of retired folks and a lot of people in between. So, you know, we're excited about that fact that we, across the state, employ over 800 people. And, you know, hope to add to that here in the future. Thank you for your question.
Okay, next speaker is Amy Gradecki, and if we could have on deck Ron Kading. Okay, thank you. Then next will be Ron Kading, and on deck Kenneth Weedman.
Hi, Ron Kading, 3929 Oxbow Drive. I'm going to talk about finances. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and I heard this no tax money being paid. I looked at the proposal, okay, $500,000 down, there's a $4.2 million balance, and they're going to pay $150,000 a year, multiply 150 times 20 years, and you come up with $3 million. That leaves $1.2 million. Where's it coming from? And I also did a couple other things, and I discussed this with one of our aldermen the other day. If I was going in to get a commercial loan, and I had looking at a $4.7 million purchase, I had $500,000 down, and I'm looking for a $4.2 mortgage, and I amortized it at over 20 years. And I figured a good rate is 4.25%. Payments for the year came up to $316,000. P&I, that's it. We're getting $150,000, so I'm just questioning that. The other issue is if the city took out a bond, and let's say they got that bond at 3%, and over a period of 20 years, they took that $150,000 every year and paid it off towards the bond. At the end of 20 years, the city would still owe over $3 million on a 20-year facility that's probably going to be worn out, okay? The other issue that I have is there's another clause in this proposal that says that any repairs or replacement of equipment over the cost of $5,000 is the city's responsibility, not Big Top. It's the city's. Now, this is for a period of 20 years. Scoreboard goes out. Let's say this digital thing goes out. The cost to the taxpayers is just incredible. And I understand why Big Top is pushing this. I mean, this is a heck of a deal for them, not for us. Thanks.
Let me address that real quickly, Ron, and I appreciate the thoughts. Some of the information that you provided was not correct in terms of the debt payment that will be required, and how this. Is it on? Okay, is not correct. And so, again, the way in which the facility gets paid for and is not on the tax dollars is through the lease payment plus the additional development around it, which creates a tax instrument which provides for $0 from the general fund dollars. Now, let's just say for the sake of example that there is zero development within the district that we create. Let's say there's nothing. Let's say nothing happens within that district. We will spend more on the Frame Park baseball facility with tax dollars than we would without the proposal, because we still have to staff it, we still have to provide service to it, we have to replace things in it, we have to make improvements to it over that 20-year life. And so whether development occurs or not, the city comes out ahead in this deal. And then secondly, from a financial standpoint, again, we have to stress that the city, we use public-private partnerships to do things that we can't otherwise do with general fund dollars. And so at the end of the day, we receive a non-tax fund revenue back to the city that we can use to reinvest in our parks or other projects. Plus, we get the $25,000 a year contribution for improvements to Frame Park, which we would not otherwise have, which are completely funded by tax dollars. So again, the financials for the city work for Big Top. They also work for the city. They work for the city with or without development, but development helps make it fund and cash flow much more quicker and provides a funding source back to the city much more quickly.
Okay, Kenneth Weedman, and on deck is Sandy Hamm.
Hi, my name is Ken Weidman. I live at 1090 Baxter Street, number 4 in Waukesha here. Frame Park is my backyard, and I'm very happy to have it as backyard. It's a nice backyard. I grew up in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, across from the Ozaukee County Fairgrounds, right across the street. And it was nice being across from the street from when the county fair would be in town and such as that. What wasn't nice was when I was growing up, we had stock car races, which attracted a large crowd and a lot of people, and would run every Wednesday night during the summers. And I do recall, of course, my mother being more angry about it than I was, but the complaints being generally the people walking through the lawn and the garbage afterwards and everything like that. And the noise. Of course, baseball is not as loud as stock car racing, but it's just it's like inviting half a town into your front yard. And my concern is for my neighborhood. And, you know, I'm not seeing the whole parking thing, because right now, you know, if Waukesha were unpopulated, then yeah, you'd have plenty of parking. Those 1,000 spots that you're talking about are very often occupied by other Waukesha events. I drive in downtown Waukesha, work. I live in downtown Waukesha, I work in downtown Waukesha. I know what it's like to drive here on a normal day, and it ain't fun. You know, it's doable, but it's not fun. And then adding an event that's going to draw between 2,500 and 4,000 people, how many times a week, is bringing that much traffic into the area. My other concern is having events that have alcohol served so close several times a week, I would imagine. I don't know exactly what the schedule would be. And the effect of some of the people, I'm sure most people here drink responsibly, but I do know that some don't, and don't feel like having to deal with drunks walking back to their cars through my backyard, possibly causing trouble, who knows what. And, you know, other questions that come to mind, are you going to have a larger police presence? That might be good for the employment of the police department, but just all these things that logistically I'm not seeing, you know. And so those are my questions: is how can you ensure that our neighborhood will be kept the way it is now?
Just so we're clear, was the question regarding police? Because that was...
It was, no, the question is, again, regarding how are you going to ensure that the traffic still flows like it does today, and that we're not going to have property damage and a lot of mayhem.
So I'll hit the alcohol one first, get to parking and the other traffic ones. And if I missed anything, Mr. Weidman, please mention that. On alcohol, we serve alcohol in all 5 of our facilities. Each facility has a responsible alcohol consumption action plan. We've got a lot of experience responsibly serving alcohol. Our venues are family friendly and family first, and that's really the focus. And if we don't create a family friendly environment, we're not going to have success. So yes, there is alcohol, but we've had a lot of experience throughout the state serving alcohol in a responsible way. Every one of our facilities is in neighborhoods. It's important that we respect our neighbors, make sure that there's not issues after the event, either from a parking or an alcohol service standpoint. So as far as the police question, we would work with police to discuss what kind of security staffing is needed in some of our facilities. Those districts that we're located in do require off-duty police. The majority of our facilities do not require that, but that's something we'd sit down with the city and be more than happy to have that conversation. Obviously, security of our guests and our neighbors comes first, so we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure that everybody is secure. As far as parking is concerned, it's a great question. It's something that we're continuing to develop that plan. And like I said, we will not get any approval on this until we have a plan that the council and everybody else approves on. So we're confident as far as the initial conversations we've had throughout the neighborhood and with local neighbors that we're going to be able to put together a parking plan that works for everybody, including guests and neighbors. There's over 1,000 spots right in the neighborhood that we can identify that are open at night that would work well for our events, and that's not including other spots that we can access as well.
And I think it's important to note on the council piece regarding parking, that's annual. You know, every year, if we're not satisfying the requirements of that parking plan, the council is going to be able to impact our capacity. And so it's in our best interest, for us to run a viable business. We will never lose focus on making sure that we're keeping the neighbors happy from a parking perspective, that we're keeping the neighboring businesses happy, and that we're keeping the city and the city council happy, because it's going to impact our ability to effectively run events at that facilities. We have a vested interest in the same things that the neighbors are concerned about, and that's, I think, a smart way to set up an agreement that hopefully gives you some comfort as we look at this possible agreement.
Sandy Hamm up next, and Sue Quinn Augustin on deck.
Good evening. Sandy Hamm, 1700 East Christine Avenue. This wasn't on my comments, but I feel I have to say that we're all limited to 3 minutes. I'm sitting here watching the clock. And unless there is a very specific question with a very short answer, We all sat quietly and listened to your 1 hour dog and pony show, and we don't need to hear long answers. You took another 3 minutes to answer the man. So I'm not going to ask any questions because it's just going to result in you guys talking for another 3 minutes. Everybody knows I'm against this project. I've read the entire 18-page proposal in detail. Of course, there's almost no exhibits. I believe that many of the claims made by Mr. Lahner are not consistent with what is in the proposed document. I'm not here to talk about baseball or redevelopment of the White Rock area. I'm here to talk about Frame Park, the deed issues, and LawCon. The financials don't play out as presented, but let the bankers speak to that. Nothing in the document secures the city. Normal TIF purpose is to increase the tax base. This TIF wouldn't do that. You talk about redevelopment. Redevelopment of this area is for the rich, and it will displace the disadvantaged. A park in a different location doesn't help the people that live near this park. You move it to Meadow View, these people aren't going to be able to let their kids go there. I mean, this document goes so far as to give up the naming rights of the park. And I'll tell you what, when it was put in, I was the nearest neighbor to Five Diamonds. And you can tell me that the footprint's only going to be 110%. But I'm a quarter mile from Five Diamonds, and I hear every ding of the baseball bat. I hear every cheer. So even though the footprint only changes by 110%, you will affect the entire park. I know it. I live right next to Five Diamonds. You talk about the people in Kenosha or La Crosse or wherever, and they love it. I wonder who you asked, but don't answer that. But I suspect that it wasn't the neighbors, but rather the mayor. I mean, I was at the meeting 5 days ago at Wednesday, word for word, this was the same. You've got the home run going into the water, and then, no, it's going to be safe, no one's going to get hit by a baseball. The Elvis Presley thing, the whole thing, I mean, it's very well choreographed. You do a great job. You talk about the first chance for a young person to play baseball, but these are collegiate. So the real first chance is at Five Diamonds.
I'm sorry, time.
Thank you, I'm done.
Just one question on the financial security, or one answer to the question. The financial security, myself, Vern, and our two other partners personally guarantee every dollar of this agreement. So the city does have some financial security.
I'm sorry, sir. We're going to take the next speaker, Sue Quinn Augustin. And then Scott Bauman on deck, please.
Hi, I'm Sue Quinn Augustin at 1501 Pine Street, Waukesha. I'm new to this. This is my first public meeting, and it's been a real eye-opener. However, I have been a longtime user and advocate of Frame Park. It goes back to my family history, where my great-grandfather was one of the stonemasons who built the formal gardens. You know, it's very important. My son knows about it. Other family members know about it. It's part of our heritage, our community. I look at this and I see a big blob. Seriously, it's going to ruin the aesthetics of our park. Our park is special to us. It's not for your profit. It is for our community. The deed was given to the city of Waukesha by Andrew J. Frame in 1926 with the condition that it stays as a public park use only. You're a private for-profit. You don't fit that. And yes, the little boat renter, he's not a big conglomerate like you are. I have read a good majority of the contract. I do have a couple questions about the contract. One is, What's going to happen if the responsibility for the shortfalls in revenue projects or projections, is the city taxpayers going to be taking on that responsibility, or do you come up with it, since it's your project? Secondly, when you guys decide that it's time for expansion, where's this going to go? Into our formal gardens that aren't supposed to be touched? Or any other part of the park? Why can't you go back in, fire station number 5? There's a big land use back there. It's got a baseball template there that would be really easy for you to convert. It's easy access to Highway 94 or I-94. It's one of your things that you said, easy access. Has better parking. There aren't so many neighborhoods around that area. You're close to a fire station with EMS and everything right there. You don't have to worry about people walking the trails getting bombarded by
30
baseballs.
seconds.
So, you are a for-profit organization. You don't have the best interests of our people, our public parks, our citizens at heart. And I find that horrible, and I like some of these questions answered.
Sir, in terms of the financial model works very well. And the way, again, the project works is that it's the lease payments plus new development in the area that pay for that. Now, if everything fails, if there's no tax increment whatsoever, we will pay less of city tax dollars towards a project than we would otherwise on Frame Park as it exists today over the next 20 years. And so it's a net gain for the city over the long term. Secondly, the issue of location. Again, it is a very well-respected park within the city. It's one of our greatest community assets, and I agree completely with you on that. The baseball has been a compatible use with that facility during its entire lifetime.
True.
It has. And so one of the things that we're doing here is preserving and enhancing that community asset to benefit the entire public and to benefit the city for the long term. And I understand that you have some concerns about the fact that there's a for-profit venture as part of that. Again, but it's a public-private partnership to create an enhanced facility for the future of the city.
I don't see it right. I'm sorry. I really don't see it. It's not proper. You're taking something in a way that's a great asset and value to our community and to the kids and to the other people around here. It's a historic landmark.
Okay. Do we have Scott Bauman? And on deck, Scott Anfinson.
Scott Bauman, Tallgrass Circle, Waukesha. I have concerns about the financing portion of it. The project could be wildly successful. It has been in other cities, as they're saying. If it is so successful, why are we as the taxpayers, why is the city footing the upfront of about 90% of the cost? We're paying 8 times what they're willing to kick in upfront. There are people that are critical of the Foxconn project. Foxconn's putting in $10 billion and the state's putting in $3 billion, and people are saying that's way too much. That's only a third of what we're putting in 8 times what they're putting in. The frequently asked question sheet says approximately $4.5 million. My question: what if it comes in at $5 to $6 million? They're still paying $500,000, I'm guessing, and we're going to pay all of the rest if there's any overruns. That needs to be answered. And the word, and I heard the word used earlier, the lease contribution, and on here it says it's going to be paid over time through a lease contribution. Why is the word contribution? Does that mean if they can't pay the full amount in a year for whatever reason, they don't have to pay it? I have real concerns. And why aren't we, if it's so successful, why aren't we getting a piece of the concessions? Why aren't we getting a piece of the gate? Why are we just getting a lease payment? If this is so successful, we should be getting more out of this project.
Let me address those questions for you. In terms of the lease is guaranteed. It's personally guaranteed. They have to pay it every year, no matter what. and those are provisions within the contract. I'm trying to remember each one of your questions, and I should have written them down. The financial model works when it's a public-private partnership. If it doesn't work when projects are privately financed. It doesn't work as a model. It won't be a successful franchise if it won't be profitable enough to make it go. Sure.
The other question was the overall cost.
Oh, and the overall cost within the agreement, anything that's above the agreed upon amount is fronted, paid for by the baseball group.
Okay, Scott Anfinson, and then on deck, Chris Bauman.
Quickly, the question on concessions. If the reason we structured the deal is the way that we do is to guarantee those funds to the city to make a deal that works. So as we sat and discussed this possibility, we wanted to project a number that was going to make the overall investment over the term of the agreement make sense. Concessions are not a predictable thing. They vary from year to year. We're essentially trying to put together a deal that we're taking that risk, and we'll see. We have no idea, honestly, exactly where this is going to land and how it's going to work. And the city, needs predictability and needs certainty as they look at something like this over the long term, and that is why the deal was structured in the way that it was, I believe.
Good evening. My name is Scott Anfinson. I'm at 802 Glen Ridge Court. I think you can see that it's not as much about baseball as it is Frame Park. And one of the things that you had talked about, Mr. Lahner, a little earlier, I had requested through a Freedom of Information Act for what we did in 2008 and help correct you, Mr. Connor. We did not get approval from the DNR in 2008 to move forward. The Common Council passed. I got correspondence with Jennifer. The information you did not provide, she did provide me with the information from 2008, and I can be glad to send you the email. And then in talking with her this morning through email, she also told me that a proposal was not submitted yet with a plan, and I'm sure you're working out the details about how you're going to pay for the land in the swap. But as part of that, there's 6 components that have to be met, and one of that is that the land that is replacing the land on Frame Park has to be equal or greater value than the land that sits on Frame Park as if you were to sell it in the open market. And I wanted to clarify that because everybody says that we are not, there's a bunch of misinformation. Well, I want to make sure we're clearing up the misinformation here as it's received from the DNR, because they are supposed to be a line of defense to help protect that land that is a park for us, the citizens.
Yeah, and just to address those issues, I'm not sure what Jennifer sent you. I'm happy to review it, Mr. Anfinson. She sent me the entire file from 2008 to the best of my knowledge, and within those documents there was approval letters as well as opinions from attorneys at DNR that agreed with that said that the project could go forward as planned at that time. If you have something contrary to that, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about it and review it with you. The other issue, we're not purchasing any new property we already own. It's slated to be a park and would meet that GRAP requirement, so there's no issue of purchasing property. And you are correct in terms from an appraisal standpoint. Appraisals have to be done and have to be submitted as part of that project. We've shared with the DNR the master plan for Meadowview Park, and we've provided them the documentation in terms of what that park is and its location, and the information on Frame Park as well. And so, again, we've had a very open discussion with the DNR about those issues, and we feel that we're going to be able to meet whatever requirements that they need to have.
All right, I know I didn't use my 3 minutes, but what I wanted to point out was, first of all, if you have those documents, when I asked for the documents from the Freedom of Information Act, you did not provide them.
Okay.
I left early.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know.
If they
They went through your office to come to me. I'm just letting you know because now it's on record. And then also there's 6 other items that you have to comply with. But the biggest point when you're talking about this swap between Frame Park, which is uniquely special, we're not New York City, but it's our Central Park, okay? So, I mean, you wouldn't go put a baseball field in Central Park. That's why you're seeing the passion in this room, okay? Everybody here, I coached my son, and we went to Cooperstown. Everybody here, most people love baseball, so it's not about baseball. And I think they got a great format that everybody here agrees with. But the point is, it's Frame Park, and that's what the issue is. And what I'm talking about for land value, you can say that 22 acres that you're talking about pulling out of Frame Park versus 25 acres at Meadowview, why don't you put it at Meadowview? It's untouched. It's a fresh start. You got to dig down at least 2 to 3 feet to put the drainway for the artificial turf anyways. You're going to tear up Frame Park and what that footprint is. So don't make people think that you're just going in there and replacing lights, because you're not. You go with a turf field and it's going to go down 3 feet minimum to put the drainage for the water.
Okay. Excuse me. Our next speaker, Chris Bauman and Frank Gruel, is on deck.
Chris Bauman, Tallgrass Circle, City of Waukesha. I didn't read this whole proposal, but I still have a couple questions. I'm just thinking anytime you're negotiating a public-private partnership, you don't want to leave anything on the table, and that would include parking and a parking plan. I think if you're going to be voting on something, that should be included. I also think, and maybe this information is out there, I get the idea of the revenue stream, because I think down the line, the city's, just with the way the state law is, the city's going to be, cities across the state are going to be in a lot of trouble meeting their expenses. So I'm hoping that we can not only reduce our spending, but I understand the idea of revenue and development and how that links to how much you can do in a city. That being said, has there been an independent cost benefit or risk benefit analysis for people to review? I think that would be especially important for the Finance Committee. Also, there's been talk on one of the slides that was presented about 3 different types of development in the area. Where's that information and what does it look like? Has there been a traffic study? What's the impact of the railroad tracks that are right near Frame Park, and how is that going to impact what's going on? How does that impact emergency vehicles? How does that impact our police department getting there if there's a major event? And then I think the answer was already, I think the question was already asked about cost overruns. I think you answered that. And then I also understand, since this is a large-scale public event, you're going to require insurance, and that cost needs to be paid by you. Thank you.
There's a neighborhood impact plan that's part of the proposal. They have to develop plans to pay or to handle the traffic. The financial agreement we've been reviewing with our financial advisors. What else? We're talking to developers about three different development proposals with the area that are still in development, and as those details come together, they'll be part of the plan.
But you understand the concern. I just believe anytime there's a public-private partnership, you don't want to leave anything on the table. I think you have to proceed with caution. I think these guys have a phenomenal business model. I would love to start a business and have TIF money to start my own business. Can you guys do that for me? Can anyone help me out? Okay, but it is special for the city because it's in a park and it's a large-scale public event. The city attorney could tell you about that, but you're going to need your own indemnification or whatever risk policy. So,
hi, my name's Frank Royal. I live on 314 Darlene Drive. And, you know, you talk about the Fox River there, the DNR, if you look at Burlington, all these towns that got a river like we do running through, Now, you can't go 2 feet down to put drain tiles down because the groundwater is so high. There is a possibility there could be contaminants in the ground around there because of the foundries and the stuff that went on before, if you read about what's there. Who's going to eat that cost? Have you done the studies in that? Are we going to move stuff away from the river? The park we got is great. There isn't a lot of cost to keep that park up. I don't know where you're getting $4.5 million to keep up Frame Park. I mean, no matter what you do, I mean, I like your baseball idea, but if that floods and you can't use that park, are you going to come up with your $150,000? Who's going to replace all the lights and everything that gets ruined? You can't control Mother Nature. They're taking out dams. Everybody's going green. Everybody's doing different things. Our kids, the high schools, they come there, they have fundraisers. That's all part of being a camaraderie of a team. I was a booster club president. We got batting tunnels and pitching machines for Carroll College, Waukesha South, and everybody. We raised thousands of dollars off that little park there. Now we're going to have a conglomerate take it over. These kids aren't going to be able to raise money. Parents are struggling to pay for their kids to come and play sports. When I was a kid, I walked in there. I got free driver's ed and stuff. Now you got to have $300. You got to be insured. You got to have everything, you know. I mean, you got a great idea. Go out here by the Waukesha Bible Church where they have school. They were going to build another site out there. You've got that big hunk of land there. We're going to build a high school. That went through. You got 164. You got 43 access over there. It might be another place. I'm not trying to shoot your job, what you have going. It's a great thing. My son was drafted by the Brewers out of high school. He didn't go. He went to college. I mean, that park meant a lot to us. It's done a lot for a lot of people in this state. And it's a beautiful thing. But you guys got to remember, it's on a floodplain, and it's going to interfere your business if the river goes over, and Lord help us, if it does. I mean, Discount Liquor used to be a Sears store. Water went there. I've been 50-some years here. I'm 63, going to be 63, and I've seen a lot of stuff. And I don't know, I mean, to change it, I mean, will it even support putting 2 stories over there? Who's going to pay for the cost overruns? You could find out. I mean, you got a little shootsy building. There isn't much cost if that floods or gets ruined. But I hope the city takes some of that land back in TIFs. Look at
30
Milwaukee.
seconds.
They've got so many TIFs, they're hurting for tax dollars because all these special deals, nobody's paying anything. They're getting to build the products, but nobody's paying nothing, and the taxpayers are getting killed. So please look at everything. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Two things I want to hit on. One, fundraisers. Every night at the ballpark, we do a fundraiser for different nonprofit. In Kenosha, we worked with the 10 baseball groups that were there before us. We hold fundraisers for them over the course of the year. We're also taking on all maintenance of the facility. We're taking that off of Carroll's plate, putting that onto our plate. So we make sure that this agreement with the current users works out better financially for them than it is now. And then as far as the cost overruns on the actual project, that's something that we'll be responsible for if the project goes over. Thank you.
Okay, Kirk Dunlap, and on deck, Karen McDonald Frame.
My name is Kirk Dunlap. I live at 1221 Wedgewood Drive. I'm a lifelong resident of Waukesha. And I've been to 3 of these other parks, Green Bay, Madison, and Mequon. And they are family. They are children friendly. They really appeal to everybody. And I can tell you, if you haven't gone there, then you just shouldn't even be in this meeting, because that is a really important part of what's coming to this town. The other part of it, the other comment I would say is our summer usage of Frame is about 5 months, 150 days. So we're talking about 36 to 40 games. I assume 40 means some playoffs. That sounds good to me. That's like 25% of our prime time. You could look at it 2 ways. Well, we're only going to change things a little bit for 25% of the time. Or you could say, hey, 25% of the time, that park's going to be hopping. It's going to have life, it's going to be fun, and it's going to add enthusiasm, not just to the people in the park, but in the ballpark, but in the park as a whole. The other thing I was pleased to hear, tonight started out talking about the zone of the redevelopment zone and not the ballpark. Well, this ballpark is the anchor tenant or the catalyst for that redevelopment. If you don't put something there, it's not going to redevelop. It's not going to redevelop by itself. It needs something to drive it.
Now, every investment's risky. And we already heard, from our administrator that this investment is better than not making it. But with this investment, you have the ability to create something bigger and better. So my point is, we have to have a little guts once in a while when something new comes along. And this complete resistance to a new and exciting opportunity surprises me, and I'm not that much younger than most of you guys. So I'm in favor of it, and I think you need to keep an open mind. Thank you.
I just want to remind everybody of the protocol. Please, no applause or shows of support or.
Okay, Karen McDonald Frame, and then on deck, Bruce Fleischman.
Hi, my name's Karen Frame McDonald. I'm at 507 North Grand Avenue, which is the house that my great-great-grandfather built. First of all, let me just say, if my father were alive, as I've spoken with one of his good friends, he would just tear out the baseball completely and put in a motocross track. Let me just start there. My great-great-grandfather donated the park and liked baseball and golf. Nobody here is against baseball, but Frame Park is not the place for a stadium where you are able to sell tickets, food, and alcohol. The grandstand shown earlier was an unfair comparison. That was not a for-profit entity. It was for private use only. There's currently, this is my biggest problem, there's currently land for sale on the Fox River at $1 million an acre. How can you justify, you and the city, justify taking some of the most valuable land in Waukesha and giving it over to a for-profit company? That makes absolutely no sense.
The area that we're talking about is the baseball stadium.
Yes.
And it's a park, and it's going to continue to remain the same exact uses.
No,
so,
it's not, because it's a privately owned company coming in to land that was donated and deeded for public use only. It's a very big difference.
Right, and we have all the existing public uses will remain, and in fact, there'll be additional public uses on that property.
Except that you have to pay to get into a game.
For that event, correct?
Yes.
For that event, correct.
So how is that public?
Because all the existing public uses that are there today continue.
Except for the
during
fact that there's a for-profit.
During the baseball game, correct.
Yes,
They
well,
get
the
to charge
land
a fee.
was specifically deeded for public use forever.
In that way.
Not quite.
Yeah.
That was my answer. Thank you.
Okay, could you please?
To use the facility now, a reservation must be made. That will continue to be the process, but like we mentioned earlier, we'll actually open it up to the public and community use, and that's not something that's happening right now. So there will be additional use, more use than there currently is for the general public.
I'm Bruce Fleischman. I own 3 properties within 200 yards of Frame Park. I own 2 directly across the road. Guess what? No one's talked to me. Not after the last time I spoke out here years ago against this project, and not now. You guys loved 17 minutes. You talked about how great Frame Park was. Guess what? It is great. We don't need this. All right? We're not looking for a Cadillac. We don't want a BMW. We're happy with a Chevy. You can sit here and tell us all the great things about BMW. They're a great car. We don't want it. We're happy with our Chevy. You guys talk about, the neighbors. That's hearsay up where you're at. I'm a neighbor here. I've owned my property on Eels Avenue for over 40 years. I pay property tax on 4 homes in the city of Waukesha. You want to know how much money that adds up to over the decades? I have my son and my other relatives here. My family, my wife's family are Hind Avenue, after the Hind family. Oh, hey, I'll do some name dropping. I landscape for Carroll College as a private contractor. Therefore, I'll use their name. I'll use Habitat for Humanity. I'll just keep on throwing all these other names in to support my idea. I want to sell everybody. Buy my BMW. I'll give you monthly payments. That'll only $30 a month. Don't worry about the $800,000 vehicle. This is being sold to us. We don't want it. Oh, it won't interfere with the line of sight from White Rock. Wait a minute here. You got bleachers there. There's parking. Years ago, I don't remember the number anymore, I walked around and counted every parking spot on every road around Frame Park. There was nowhere even near 1,000. You guys are throwing all this misinformation out, misdirecting, selling a BMW. We're not interested. You hear people talk about the cost of this. Guess what? Money is real. You can't just say, oh, and blow them off because they're done talking their 3 minutes. You guys have heard over and over again, the relatives of Andrew Frame doesn't want this. Who are you working for? Not the relatives who have been here, the people who have lived here all their lives. My son Patrick, wherever the heck he is over here, thank you, Pat, he lives in a house in Eels Avenue. He was born there. He's over 40 years old. We are the ones who know what Frame Park is. It's not about private.
30 seconds.
It's not about private money. We don't care that Frame Park cost us money. We have a lot of things that cost us money in the city of Waukesha. We do not need to take prime land and use it for this. There's all kinds of land you can use, and we don't need to finance it because somewhere along the line you think you can justify it. We're not interested, even though it is a BMW.
Okay, can I just remind you there's no clapping or applauding. The next speaker is Steve Edlund, and on deck, James Sisson.
Steve Edlund, 426 Prospect Avenue. You know, in 2008, this proposal was put before our community, and at that time, the proposal was the developer was going to build the entire infrastructure and gift it to the city. Now things have turned. Now the city is going to build something for a for-profit company that doesn't pay its ball players one penny because they're college amateur players. They make the money off of beer sales, concession stand, ticket sales. I don't know. I don't like employees not getting paid. You know, when we talk about redevelopment of that area, Frame Park and that area are mutually exclusive because putting a stadium in Frame Park does not generate any tax revenue for a TIF district. Okay, so that's a completely separate issue. And when you're talking about redeveloping the TIF district, there's one big concern that I have. As part of it is Habitat for Humanity. You propose some houses there to increase the tax base. For those people who don't know, your water bill is going to jump to between $200 to $300, water and sewer, I want to say and sewer, is going to jump to between $200 and $300 per month. Habitat for Humanity is priced out of this city. It is not for low income. When we talk about redevelopment of that area, Frame Park was already redeveloped in the 1990s. Beverly Chappie, Peter Lettenberger, and Donald Funslingland were part of the Fox River Development Authority in 1990. They volunteered as community leaders, giving up 8 years of their life to redevelop Frame Park. Frame Park is just fine. There is nothing wrong with it. It doesn't need to be redeveloped. As a matter of fact, at that time, they were discussing removing the ball diamond from Frame Park. And it was a long discussion. They decided to leave it in there for the benefit of Carroll College and the high school teams. Currently, the high school teams in Carroll College do not exceed the capacity of the 200 stadium seats, as you guys call it, stadium. They're bleachers. They don't exceed that capacity, so it suits their needs just fine. They're moving to spring baseball now. They will never need a 2,500 seat stadium. So to try to use them, the school district of Waukesha, as a pawn for public relations is abhorrent.
30 seconds.
That's using children for your own gain. I don't like that. The stadium that you have in Kenosha, I'd like you to answer this question, but wasn't that an empty stadium that the city of Kenosha was trying to get somebody in there? And isn't that true of a lot of the stadiums within the Northwoods League? I know you've had some teams that went belly up, like in Brainerd and in Illinois, which Chad Bauer, the last proposer.
Sorry, time.
is now the owner of a team called the Riveters in a stadium that was empty. Thank you.
Simmons Field in Kenosha did host teams previously. Actually hosted a Midwest League team and a Northwoods League team in the league's infancy. And the facility was being operated by a group of conglomerate of 10 to 12 community baseball teams that were struggling to pay the bills and keep it operational on an annual basis. And we partnered with them and the city to redevelop the facility to continue the access and use for those 10 to 12 groups that still play there today, and to redevelop the stadium and kind of bring it back to, and maybe beyond, its kind of rich history that it did have in that community.
Thank you.
Okay, James Sisson. And on deck, Mike Walsh.
James Sisson, 906 Valley Hill. Like others, I'm not against baseball. I think what you have here is great. I'm not a fan of it being at Frame Park. I think you made a comment about there was either 7 or 8 of the 9 parks
7 of 9. Yep.
are at other facilities that are in parks, and made me think, why is that? It's because it's tax-free. So the idea of this creating any kind of tax revenue, I think, is bogus. So, not a fan. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear. The stadium itself is not a taxable entity. It's not. But the improvements and the lease agreement are revenue positive back to the city. It is over the long term.
If you add up the $500,000 plus the $175,000, which is the $150 plus the $25,000 improvements, it only adds up to $4 million. And somebody else brought up the fact that if there's any kind of damage that happens and something has to get replaced, you're going to tell me that nothing's going to get replaced over the 20 years? Seriously?
No, but we continue to have to maintain the stadium over the life of that 20 years as well.
Right. Where's that money going to come from?
And today, it's coming from tax dollars.
Oh, yeah, but you're talking about a 2,500 seat stadium that is $4.2 million versus 200 bleachers. You're talking apples and oranges.
Okay, we have Mike Walsh up next and Eugene Brown on deck.
Hi, everyone. Mike Walsh, 2412 Kestrel Lane. First disclosure, I'm not a big baseball fan, so sorry. And I haven't been to those other stadiums, but I'm still here. I am part of the NIMBY group, which is the not in my backyard, right? So, but I don't live over there. And a lot of people have said, well, let's put it here, let's put it there, let's put it there. But it's got to be somewhere, so I guess you guys chose Frame Park. So the city of Waukesha over the years has done a lot of projects. They put a gazebo, which you guys are modeling on top there in the city downtown. Kind of a negative thing for me, but the bus depot we spent $15 million on to bring people somewhere. Nobody showed up. The Clark Hotel, don't worry, you guys. There's more to this. No, promise. No, Clark Hotel, $1.5 million. They're not paying their bills. The Mill Reserve is another bad project, and then you guys want to do City Hall, and then I'll get on to Buckner in a second. Buckner and Horeb, they bring 60,000 to 75,000 swimmers per year with an 80 to 90% recovery rate, which means the city is on the hook for $20,000 to $60,000 a year currently, and about 10 years ago it was about $200,000 a year. All this is going somewhere, I promise. Anyway, so I think it's a good project. You know, who would ever think I'd be up here saying I think this is a good project? You know, we want to spend $8 million on Buckner Pool, or it's been talked about, to service 60 to 75,000 people. It's all kids. Okay, what about the adults? So I do have questions on the financials, and I want to make sure the financials work out for us. But if we can bring an event, I'm not hung up on the park thing. I'm sorry, you know, to the people that are hung up on the park. I think it's a beautiful project. I think when it's all built, you know, it's like any other building that goes in. It looks like hell until it's in there. The park is nothing special right now. The river's green in the summertime with moss. I mean, so there's not much to see there. Though I do like the river. I do swim in it. Well, I kayak on it. We got a shortfall of money. The city administrator during the event on Wednesday evening for Aaron Perry said that there, in worst case scenario, could be a $1.5 million hook for the citizens. I want to make sure he addresses that tonight. So, because I don't like smoke and mirrors, I sell cars for 28 years, and the one thing I do is I sell with integrity and I tell all the facts. So I want to make sure that everything is talked about with facts. The other thing that bothers me is that we have city leaders. The only person in this room who, in the city leadership, that said that he's on board so far with it is the city administrator. Everybody else said they don't have an opinion. You all got a dang opinion. Please share it with us.
30 seconds.
Okay? If you are leaning one way or the other, say it. Be honest, okay? If you're going to vote for it, be honest with your people. If you're really not true with it, you know, please work it out. And quit demonizing businesses, okay? This is... It's a for-profit business. Without for-profit businesses, all of us would be on welfare, but there wouldn't be any money to pay the welfare with. So, you know, that's it. Thanks.
Mike, I appreciate the comments. And just let me address your question, and that's the issue is, so let's say no development occurs. There's nothing. There's no redevelopment, anything like that. It's a $1.5 million over 20 years. And that is more than what the city would pay for the maintenance operation, capital improvements to that area over that 20-year time frame. We have a long track record of spending at least that much money in that area, and that's what we would be on the hook for.
Ready?
Go ahead, Eugene.
Okay.
And then on deck, David Goldner.
Couple of comments and just one question, I think. I would have appreciated having, since you've got such nice graphics and handouts, I would have appreciated a graphic that shows where these 1,000 parking places are. That would have been good for me. Also, I guess I missed it in your presentation or falling asleep that you know, who owns these other parks that you're at or the facilities on those parks? That's the question. But the last comment is, it's been stated several times, excuse me, that the cost to maintain Frame Park would be more if this development doesn't take place than if it did take place. I think a couple of people previously talked about aesthetics. And if this is just an issue of money, I'm sure there's other ways to raise money to maintain the park without putting in bleachers and a grandstand. And it also bothers me a little bit with the concessions. Someone previously mentioned that, you know, how about Waukesha business people operating the concessions? Or, you know, it'd be nice. Each tavern once a month gets to sell their beer. And the profit goes to the people that are in Waukesha. That's it. Thank you.
The question, the answer regarding the ownership of the other facilities that we operate in is that the cities in each community that we operate in own the facilities, and we have long-term lease agreements with those municipalities to manage those facilities. Somewhat similar structurally to what we're proposing with Waukesha.
Thank you.
And I do think it's important to note that we would work hard to work with local businesses, and our hope would be that they would be supportive of us. We typically haven't worked in a way similar to what you've outlined, but we do have a long track record of having very positive relationships with communities, with businesses in the communities that we've operated in.
If I could just quickly add to that too, while a lot of times from a licensing issue, it's challenging to bring in outside folks to operate the concession stands. What we do try and do is use local products, serve local products, buy from local vendors, and keep as much money in the community here as we can. And that's something we do across the state.
David Goldner, 911 Pleasant Street. And I'm going to give you the answers before I ask the question. So the answer is either the taxpayers or Big Top. So my question is, who pays for maintenance and who pays for damages in the future after this park is developed? Thank you.
So in terms of maintenance, Big Top pays for maintenance and for damages through, if there's an insurance issue, it's through their insurance. And then we would partner on any major improvements to the facility.
Okay, Bonnie Knippel with Chris Schultz on deck.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the two gentlemen, first of all, for the great presentation they gave. You gave a lot of numbers. You gave a beautiful graphic. However, when some of the slides were showing, I saw at one point, I believe the city, it was going to cost the city $3.5 million. I thought I saw on a slide, and yet the handout talks about $4.5 million. Like Mr. Brown, I had the question about the parking. It would have been great to have had a map to actually show us where are the 1,000 spots. I'm wondering, are you counting up by the courthouse, up on the hill? I don't know where 1,000 are. I do have big concerns about the bleachers and being able to see the river, to see the park from White Rock. Mr. Lahner, we've not met before. I'm thinking you're newer to the community. Personally, I found it offensive to see your Christmas card up there with your family, because to me it seemed like you were trying to make it be, you know, kind of like, guys, I'm one of you. I've lived in Waukesha over 30 years, and our family has gone to Frame Park too. We've walked around it. You know, we've gone to events there, and you know, I guess I should have brought my Christmas card too and shown my family at Frame Park. I found that offensive, and frankly, I found it offensive where it was listed that Mr. Frame, I think that's his name, how he actually had invested in a baseball team or was interested in baseball years ago, because I think that's irrelevant now. Our family is not in support of Frame Park being utilized by a for-profit, for a company, you know, and great company. It sounds like you guys have a lot of knowledge, experience. I'd love to see you not at Frame Park. Thank you.
Questions? The first question about the 3.5 million, that was our contribution. The city contribution is between 3.8 and 4.2 million.
You know, I get frustrated when you say, well, your contribution being $3.5 million. It isn't, here's $3.5 million.
Correct.
You're talking about $3.5 million over 20 years.
That's correct.
Okay. Just be sure and say that.
Okay.
Because that's not what I think the city is going, when we talk about how much we're going to pay, we're not saying $4.5 million over 20 years, are we? Right. I'd also like to add one other question, because another thing, when at the next meeting that will be happening in a week or two, I'd love to see a slide showing, because it's been repeatedly said that the city is going to have to pay that money anyway for upkeep of Frame Park. I don't understand that. It's been said over and over again. Show us the numbers. Thank you.
Chris Schultz, and then on deck, Dave Jones.
Hi, I'm up on Ridgewood Drive by Waukesha South. I've actually got 10 questions, some for the city, some for Big Top. The first, it was $1.5 million over 20 years for the current park upkeep, correct? That's the number you had said, approximately? Okay. On that, with the 20-year lease, you're looking at least 2 turf replacements. You're looking at anywhere between, I don't know, like minimum $800,000 to $3 million if you end up with, 3 replacements. Is that being budgeted? I'm going to try and run through these real quick and give you. So the cost of that, traffic flow. Like, if you've been in Waukesha, traffic to 94 through that area is absolutely abysmal. I can't imagine adding that much traffic and adding activities in there without causing major congestion. As mentioned before, the trains don't run on a schedule. That's also going to add to that congestion in that area. What is the plan for that? Let's see what else. The community redevelopment. I've been to the Madison Mallards. The area is built up very, very nicely around that park. Kind of, but the park is nice. What kind of development have you seen in other facilities? I know a couple of pictures you showed are in extreme residential areas, so there's probably not much development being done in those areas. The previous, in 2008, the upfront was supposed to be put up front was $2 million for the facilities. You guys are offering $500,000. I'm just curious why, the difference, when we're 9 years later. River and alcohol. I know the alcohol issue is brought up. In Milwaukee, we have people drowning because they're drunk. La Crosse has the same issues, and they've got railings all along that river in both cities. We don't have any of that along that river walk. I think, sorry to kind of throw it out there. I don't know where you want to start with that.
Forgive us if we miss them. Please fire them back at us. But turf replacement. In all of our consulting, all the work we've done, turf normally lasts 10 to 12 years. We would be on the hook for that replacement, that capital improvement over the term of the lease. So we think there would be, over the 20-year lease, there would be one turf replacement. That'd be our responsibility.
Okay, real quick with that. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
So I went to Carroll, played at Carroll. They were expecting at least 10 years out of that, and I think they got 7 before they had to replace that field. Just curious, I don't know if things have come along.
So technology has that's a fascinating field. Every year we're seeing technology in that field get better, prices go down.
Okay.
A lot of it ends up with the maintenance, and that would be our responsibility to maintain the field. Okay. And we would have an interest to maintain it well, to preserve it as long as possible. Okay. We operate other facilities with a turf field, and I have experience doing that, and are confident that we can treat it in a way that will last 10 to 12 years.
What's your oldest field with turf?
Going on 4 years.
Okay.
And it's close to new.
Okay. I guess the traffic would be the next issue. I don't know if that'd be a city issue or.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, they have to develop a traffic management plan for the facilities. We have community events down there on a regular basis. The timing of the games helps to manage that traffic flow. It's typically an evening game, so it's not during a lot of high traffic events. And so, again, the parking plan has to be approved. And one of the benefits of having parking at different parking lots is that not everybody's trying to access the same streets at exactly the same time. They're coming in from different directions, and they're leaving different directions.
Sure, but you're so limited right there with White Rock.
With White Rock, yeah. And there's White Rock, and there's
Moreland. I mean, that's like
Moreland.
It's just a jam. I mean,
exactly. And we haven't experienced really heavy traffic issues with other events that have been there of similar size, and we've handled a lot of that over the years.
What other events have we had that have brought 2,500 to 4,000 people down to that area?
The Oktoberfest, the Fiesta Waukesha. Those are just a couple of them that bring.
Well, I mean, I've been down there for like the ski shows. I'm trying to think one of the activities we in town where they bring the helicopter in, like the congestion.
National
is real.
Night Out.
Yeah, like that congestion is real, and now we're talking about 30 to 40 games, and then additional whether you do concerts, whatever else we're bringing in. For next presentation, I'd love to see something. I mean, even if it's like an idea.
Our last two projects, most common development, you're seeing around the facilities, quite a few restaurants and housing. Those are the two most common things, and candidly, the most interested in folks we're talking to, the most interested in parties coming along with this project.
Okay. And then I guess for the city would be actually the cost. If you under the cost, like what was the difference between the cost? It was $2 million previously for the previous proposal, and it's
I think. If you look at the last proposal, it didn't work. It never happened.
Yep.
Didn't come together. And as we've got 10 years of experience, we've rebuilt 3 stadiums in the last 6-7 years. So we've experienced doing this, and we feel this is the most sustainable way to partner with the city to make this work for both parties.
And then the safety issue, the alcohol and the river. I don't know if that's your issue, if it's a city issue. I mean, it's both, I guess.
I think it would be all of our issues. I think it's a great question. I think we'd, it all comes back to the experience inside the park, and first of all, responsibly serving alcohol and training your staff, making sure you do that well. But we will have to take precautions, work with police, work with the city to make sure that that's not an issue. And we'll also, post-event, have to secure the river and secure those areas to make sure there's no issues.
Okay. Yeah, just for the record, I came in against this, and I don't know, I'm on the fence now. I kind of like the idea. I've been to the Mallow James, I liked it. But the congestion, I think it's going to be a real issue in that.
And I appreciate, the congestion, the parking, the issues that are brought up today. We appreciate that, and we're going to do our best to have some answers for you at the next public meeting. So thank you for bringing those up.
Okay, we have Dave Jones, and then Adele Vogel will be on deck, and I believe she's our last person that signed up with questions. So if there's anyone else, please get me your sign-up sheets.
I'm Dave Jones, 1516 Aaron Lane. My wife and I have lived here for a while. We are Carroll graduates, but don't let the baldness and the beard gray belie you. I'm in my early 30s. My wife's in her late 20s, so we are the millennials of which we were talking at the beginning. We moved to Waukesha, even though I could have lived in Tosa, Milwaukee, wherever I work downtown. We wanted to live here because it's a growing city. We love it here. The people here are amazing. I grew up in Mukwonago, so just down the road. My wife's from Erin, so we're like country folk, if you will, and yet this was kind of where we landed, even though I wanted to live in Milwaukee. I love the city. I would love to see a ballpark here, so I am absolutely 100% for this. Our city is growing. I was looking at population growth. It's not huge, but even in the last 20 years, I think we're up like 15,000. So we're growing, and it's going to continue. The trajectory, if you look, is growing significantly. So there's going to be more people here. This is a great way to encourage more people to come to town, encourage people to see our great city, to move here, to bring their families here, to provide more of a tax base for us, to do greater things, to preserve those parks in a grander way. This discussion reminds me a lot of what happened way back in the day at a little place called Wrigley Field. This is the exact same discussion. Oh, the lights are bright, the noise, whatever it was. They ended up building it, and it's now one of America's greatest ballparks, right? No one wants to see it torn down. Everybody loves it. It's the Chicago Cubs. I hate the Cubs, but I love going to Wrigley because it's Wrigley, and I would live next door to it. I have friends that live right down the road, and I love it. Nobody's peeing on their lawn. Nobody's getting people get crazy, but it's not out of the ordinary. It's nothing more than we would see at some of the other local events here with people having one or too many drinks and responsible serving. Good job. Good on you guys. I'll hold you to it. I think that's all I have. I just want to see it built. I think the city's growing, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to strut our stuff in front of the rest of the counties around here and the rest of the cities and show what we've got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somehow, I don't know how I wind up being last, but I do want to say, and I've said it before, I love baseball, but I love Frame Park more. And I'm not really giving you questions, I'm really just have a few comments. And one bothers me is that oftentimes you refer to as 30, 40, whatever the number of events are that would be held in Frame Park, but yet the contract states 85 events per year. And that's a big difference. That's 50% more than what I keep hearing. The other thing that bothers me is $500,000 now is not the same as what $500,000 is going to be in 15 years, 18 years, 20 years. There's no planned increases for maintenance, for the contract, for nothing. And yet I was told by you guys that my property, which is really close, I live, by the way, at 1090 Baxter Street. I literally have Frame Park in my backyard, and I love it there. I've owned that $500,000 property for almost 18 years. I'm not a newcomer just because I've only lived here for 2 years. My concern is you have mentioned neighborhood impact plan numerous times. Everybody uses that real fancy word, but quite frankly, I've not heard what it is, and I don't think any of the others around me have either. And lastly, I have to say this, and I'm saying this more directed towards Kevin than I am anyone else. This is just a comment, but I'm actually feeling insulted and hurtful that you are calling my neighborhood a blighted area. I'm really insulted by that. Yes, you don't say Baxter Street, but you say White Rock, 1 block away. I don't believe it's a blighted area. I think it's an older area in a city that's old. And to say it's blighted and to add a few new houses is going to make it change, and that's going to be affordable living. I provide affordable living in Waukesha. I have a commitment to providing that. It's my choice. It's my husband's choice. One of my tenants was here tonight, and he spoke absolutely without me knowing that he was coming here. And I think that's important because I didn't offer him anything to do so. So I just want to say that I'm hurt. I'm hurt because I don't think I live in a blighted area, and
30 seconds.
I don't think my $500,000 property, give or take a few thousand, is something that's to be taken lightly. And I don't think my opinion should be taken lightly. And I won't even mention parking because my husband's blood pressure will go up. So thank you all very much.
I do have two additional speakers, Mike Payne and Ron Pedersen.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Actually, I was just going to listen, but I did jot some notes down before I came. Mike Payne, I'm at 1001 Downing Drive in Waukesha. Again, thanks for the opportunity. Kevin, Mr. Lahner, thanks for putting this together tonight. The guys at Big Top, I just want to say thank you. You know, it does have some risk to expand your business, and I understand that. Over the last several weeks, I've watched the progress, and I've read the Freeman, and I've talked to a lot of folks. Obviously, there's a group of citizens that are organized and opposed to this. While I disagree with their position, I do respect them really coming out tonight and them being organized for a cause they believe in. And I think we can all be civil. And there's been a few times tonight that we were kind of on the edge of that, which is disappointing. I do believe it's a small segment of the population. There's a lot of folks in Waukesha like me, you know, like the gentleman that just spoke. 27 to 35, we got young kids at home. We're not necessarily as civically active as we could be, but I'm here tonight to really give you that perspective. Let's start with a few statistics. Just keep these numbers in mind. 2.9%, 67%, and 43%. 2.9% is the unemployment rate in Waukesha County today. 67% are the amount of businesses that are struggling to attract young talent. And 43% is the median age of Waukesha County. We're an aging county. It's not bad. It just is what it is. It's not going to get better. We have a lot of baby boomers. We have to attract young talent. By 2030, that number is going to rise. It's going to be over 43. It's going to be over 43. To me, this proposal is a question of what type of city do we want to be? Do we want to be an aging population, a retirement community that never wants to change? The Common Council really needs to think about that. That's the reason we do strategic planning. We chart a path. Or do we want to be a community that embraces change, realizes that we're competing to attract talent in Waukesha County? Great place to live. Pewaukee, New Berlin, Brookfield, they're all trying to get the same folks. The gentleman that just spoke. He can
30 seconds.
He can live wherever he wants. Quite frankly, I'm growing a little tired of no one ever wanting to take a chance or do anything. The numbers have to work, let's just face it. But as a community, we got to be willing to change. We got to be willing to change things. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity, and it will create development. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, Kevin, you're going to have to follow through on that. But I have two boys at home, and I can tell you,
time.
Folks my age, they're determining where they want to live. They have choices. Cost of living is a factor. Things to do with your kids is a factor. Safe community. All those things are factors. So,
Thanks,
thank you.
Mike.
Yep.
Ron Pedersen, and on deck, Mark Bellato.
It's pronounced Peterson. Ron Peterson, 1935 Harvest Lane. Yeah, I was born in Waukesha. I love Waukesha, and I'm for anything that will improve Waukesha. My question, and by the way, Big Top, you did a great job, a great presentation. My question is to you, Kevin. I'm not a math genius, but I'm having a hard time understanding the numbers. We're going to invest $4.5 million. They're going to give us $4 million back. We have to maintain Frame Park today, and it has an X factor cost. So if we're already down $500,000 and we're still going to have to maintain the park, how are we better off tomorrow with them than without them?
So the way the proposal works is combining the new stadium with the redevelopment of the area and moving our maintenance costs and the improvements that we have to make.
Yeah, but let's
Frame Park.
eliminate the TIF because the TIF is an unknown.
And we can eliminate the TIF completely.
How are we better off if we spend 4.5 to get 4, and then we have to maintain the park anyway?
Because our costs with nothing, with zero development whatsoever, is more today than it would be to fill that $500,000 gap that you're referring to.
I don't understand that. Explain that to me. If we spend 4.5 today, and we're going to get $400,000 back, how do we make that up? Is that like buying apples at 2 cents a piece, selling a lot of them at a penny a piece, and making it up in volume?
Because we have costs. Because we have costs today. We have costs today that we have to do.
We're going to have those costs today, tomorrow, and next year.
Right, but if we do the proposal, we're shifting some of those costs to these guys. And they're taking on that maintenance and operation of that.
What are those numbers?
They're taking on the capital improvement.
What are those numbers?
It's roughly $1.5 million.
That we're passing to them or that we have today?
That we would have with or without the proposal.
With or without them?
Without the proposal.
Without the proposal, our cost of maintaining Frame Park is $1.5 million.
Over the 20 years.
Okay.
Between the
and their contribution is what beyond the $4 million? That's what we're not hearing. The math doesn't work. They're going to give us a total aggregate of $4 million. We initially spend $4.5 million. We still have to maintain the park, but they're not giving us any additional funds, according to you.
They have to maintain the field. That shifts the cost.
But it's their field for profit.
Right, but they have to maintain the field.
What is our aggregate cost for 20 years for maintaining that field? Just the field, not Frame Park.
We'd have to.
It's minimal.
It's not minimal.
It's minimal because Carroll College takes care of quite a bit of that.
Yeah, but there are ongoing needs. We've made an investment in the lights in the recent year. We've made an investment in the backstop. We have to make investments in the fencing. We have to make investments in the turf. Those things add up over the course of 20 years.
I understand, but we have to maintain that either way.
Right. And
all they're going to do is maintain the field.
Right. The other piece of that is that we, as part of the agreement, there's additional dollars coming back to the city specifically for Frame Park, which we don't receive today at all. And so those two factors combined make it a less expensive, cash positive endeavor for the city.
Well, the math doesn't add up.
I'd be happy to sit down with you.
I would love to hear the explanation.
We can walk it through in more detail.
But have the numbers exact when we sit down so that I can understand.
And some of it is going to be projections because we can't project everything to exact specificity.
I understand that, but we have present day costs.
Yeah.
And if they're assuming all of those costs, we'll know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me? This has been a conversation, not me talking for 3 minutes. So I will call your office tomorrow and set
for
up
the
an
most part of it,
appointment.
I was trying to start and stop the timer as much as I could. Okay, Mark Blotto, and then on deck, Morgan Butler.
It's pronounced Blado, B-L-A-D-O. I recognize a few people here. Dean came around and talked to me a couple of months ago at my house. Sandy, I think I went to high school with him, if he's still here. So I'm a longtime resident here. My folks came over from Germany in the 1880s. I'm a third generation. I love Waukesha. I've lived here most of my life. Went to high school here, college, UW Waukesha. Got married here at Trinity, right around the corner. It's not a blighted neighborhood. It's a very pretty area. I work in Waukesha. I've been here for about 37 years working in Waukesha. My wife went to high school here. Kids went to high school here. Participated in all the parks. And I love Frame Park, but I think this is the wrong place to put this ballpark. It just doesn't seem like it's the right fit. I think there's a lot of other parks that we could put it in around the town, out in the county. It just doesn't seem like the right fit. I've shot my daughter's high school pictures down at the gardens down there. My wife has taken pictures down there. In fact, I think I've proposed to her, or almost did, in that area down there. And I love that area, but I just don't think it's not the right fit for this. And I think there's a lot of other places in the town or in the surrounding areas in the county that we would be best served. I'm all for baseball. I go to a few Brewer games. I go to some of the softball games at the complex. I go to some of the hardball games just still played at Buckner Park. But I just don't see this happening at Frame Park. The other thing that kind of bothers me too is I agree with what Don was saying here before about the math. I don't quite understand it either. I'm a long-time reader of the Freeman. If you could put some math in there that would explain this, I think that would help go a long way. But I just don't see it adding up to the cost that you're talking about. And like Warren Buffett said, if you don't understand it, then don't put your money into it. Thank you.
Morgan Butler, and then Jennifer Ray.
Hi, my name is Morgan Butler, lifetime resident of Waukesha on Milky Way Road. My great grandfather's photo is literally on the other side of this wall. We've been here for generations. And I am also up here to talk about the finances of this. Now we're giving out $4.5 or $4 million or however much to this project. We're acting as a bank, giving out a loan. And let's talk about the basic economics. Opportunity cost. If we're giving out $4.5 or $4 million right now, and we're only getting it back after 20 years, $4.5 million, over 20 years, you add interest on that, $4.5 million is tons of money, way more than that. If we're just giving all this away, the economics don't work out. If you just look at it on paper and it's, we're spending 4.5 and we're getting back 4.3 or 4.0, on paper that looks like it works out, but we're talking over 20 years. Let's talk about just basic interest. If we're going to act as a bank for this project, why aren't we getting back interest on this? And I mean, I'm going to be one more person up here to say the math doesn't work out in my eyes. And I think it would seriously behoove the alderman and the city administrator, when you come to the finance committee meeting, don't just come here with these pretty looking numbers, come here with the worst case scenario numbers so that we can have an objective look at this. Seriously, we're not trying to pander to a company. We need to be looking at all of this absolutely objectively, and so that all of us get the whole scoop on what we're paying here. I mean, a lot of people have been up here bringing up, this and that about what if this goes wrong and what if that goes wrong and these costs and that. And please, you guys are the city leaders. Please have not just the interests of a vision in mind, but have the interest of all of these people that have come up here with concerns, have their concerns in mind too. If you guys want to convince them of the vision, show us the true numbers.
I appreciate that very much, and we will have a thorough discussion of those financials with the Finance Committee. We'll post it on the website as well. We'll make sure that people get that information.
Jennifer A., 1127 The Strand. I am also in that millennial generation. I am 30. I have 2 daughters at home. We live 0.25 miles from the park. We walk down there multiple days a week during the summer. My huge concern is traffic. It is parking. It is also the finances. I was a math minor in college. My husband's a math teacher. These numbers, as many have said, in my mind, don't work out. Adding the interest to our $4.5 million in over the 20 years, what we're getting back doesn't work out. I understand development opportunities and what could come from that. I get that. But to me, is this really what's going to change somebody's decision to invest in that area or to move to that area? I don't see that. I don't see a business saying just because there's a baseball park that is open during the summer, I'm going to choose to set up shop there versus somewhere else. I don't see it personally. I also worry about the parking and the traffic. I've been down there when the breast cancer walk is down there. It's crazy to try to cross White Rock. That makes me concerned for trying to take my girls to the park that they love, that they want to play at. Yes, we have a park literally right across our street, which is why we bought our house. We're right across from Phoenix High Park. Yes, it's great, but they love being at Frame Park. Our neighbors love being at Frame Park. We walk down there together. I don't want to cross that street with them. 30-some, and if you're counting, as somebody said, the 80-some days during the summer where there could be additional traffic there, I don't want that. I want to know, and I'd like to hear tonight, what parking lots you guys have considered for these 1,000 spots. Because I know the parking lots around that area, and I know there's businesses that have parking lots near there. I don't think they add up to 1,000 spots, one. And two, have you even started contacting them to see if they would let you use those spots or not? So I would like, honestly, tonight, where you're at in those discussions. How many have you talked to of those places? And where are those places? And I just want to make one comment. I really like that the alderman, who has been extremely supportive of this, is not here tonight. So that's just my last comment.
The spaces are all within less than half mile. There's over 1,000 of them, and we've contacted, I don't know the exact number, but yes, we've started dialogue with multiple business owners and nonprofits who provide parking. Pardon me? Yeah, they're all within a half mile of the ball diamond. Yeah, so
Okay. We do have additional speakers. Katie, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, Engeling?
Katie Engeline, 3616 Williams Court. So I'm located very far away from Frame Park. In fact, pretty much as far in Waukesha as you can get. My history with Waukesha started when I was a child. I grew up in Naperville, Illinois, and came to Waukesha for soccer tournaments with Spring City Soccer Club, which kind of exists. I then proceeded to come to Carroll College for college, obviously, and got a nursing degree. Never went home. Now this is my home. Been here longer than my hometown. My 10-year-old son decided to come with us tonight because I told him where I was going, and he wants to save his park. Sorry, I'm a crier. When I was in college, Frame Park was the place where I went for a run. I watched my college boyfriend play baseball. I hate baseball. I didn't marry him. But I did marry another Carroll College grad, and he now currently works at Carroll University trying to bring in funds for Carroll University. I understand that this stadium is going to be beautiful, except that Frame Park is beautiful already. It will take away from some of that beauty. It will also take away the view of the river. It'll take away the view of the ballpark from the walk, that big digital wall you're talking about. My son won't be able to see a Carroll College game while we're biking down that bike path or playing at the playground. because now we'll have to go inside the stadium. My main question is, how is this going to help with our community that it's already doing? How is this going to help Carroll College? How is it going to help people see a Carroll College game? Same with the Waukesha high schools. How is that going to help them?
30 seconds.
Am I now going to have to pay to go inside the stadium to see those games? How is it getting my son the chance to get into that stadium those 12 days for 3 hours? We're helping give you money. What money are you giving back to our community? There's no revenue except for what we're already putting forth. So where's their 10% of your profit back to our community, or whatever amount that is?
Time.
I think on Carroll specifically, that's a great example that you brought up. Connor might know the numbers exactly, but they lose the most home games on an annual basis in their conference because of rain problems at that site. Bringing in turf will get rid of, hopefully, almost every single rainout that they've had problems with in the past, because the field in the spring especially has had some problems from a drainage perspective as we understand it. And so the turf for Carroll specifically would certainly allow them to be able to play more home games without having to travel to go on the road. Actually, currently, if they have projected rain, they are forced to go on the road in advance of the weekend, just with the possibility that they couldn't get the games in at the facility from time to time. It would be the choice of Carroll and the high schools as to whether or not they wanted to charge. I wouldn't imagine that they would start to charge. That would not be our decision. And I do think it's, I think we noted it before, but we would be putting $25,000 a year into, a fund for improvements to Frame Park, not to specifically include the baseball field. So there are funds that would be going into it. And as far as your son goes, we want to, and we need to work to create a business that is going to be appealing to young families in this community. That's the core of what we do. We host in other communities around the state free clinics. We have all kinds of opportunities for our players to interact with young players. And we pride ourselves on those kinds of things, and that's going to be our risk and our responsibility as a business operator, is to figure out ways that we can appeal if we do get an approval on this project to you and to your family. And we're confident that we can do that. We've done it in other communities that we operate in, and we're proud of that history, and we look forward to the opportunity to try and do that here in Waukesha.
If I can hit just two more questions as it relates to your son. I think you bring up a great point of trying to make sure that there is some points in the fence that you can see into the stadium and watch what's going on. We talked about potentially having a knot hole along the path in the left field area, but I think having more spaces like that so people in other parts of the park can see what's going on, we'd be open to that. This is why we have meetings like this. We want to get feedback from the community when it comes to design. We're open to ideas, opinions. We put our information up there. Please reach out to us. One other thing as it relates to kids as well. In all of our markets, we do reading programs. And they're incentive-based. The teacher in the classroom sets that incentive. In Kenosha, we had 90 schools participate, over 10,000 kids get a free ticket to a Kingfish game. So we want to keep it affordable. We want to get the youth free of charge into the facility and enjoying what we do.
I just want to make it known that these aldermen in front of us can see that this is going to benefit the community more than it's going to benefit Big Top, because that's really what we need for Waukesha. Is it has to benefit us more than it benefits a company and a business.
Mary Jane Sanchez and Sharon Wardman.
Good evening, everyone. Mary Jane Sanchez. I'm a Waukesha resident, long time, since 1973. Grew up here, my kids, so on and so forth. I'm a downtown business owner. I'm also on the Waukesha ID board, and I'm actually a recipient of this year's Community Development Award by Common Council. So what I'm saying is that I'm very passionate about Waukesha downtown and everything that's going on. All the people that may or may not follow me on social media, every day my pictures are all about City of Waukesha and letting people know, live streaming the parade, so on and so forth. And one of the places is definitely the Fox River Park, or the Waukesha Frame Parkway. So I have a question though for the Big Top, and hopefully you can answer this. Have you considered any other place in the city of Waukesha that you could put your project?
We've looked at, it's a good question. We've looked at other parks. A couple things. One, the infrastructure here at Frame Park allow this project to work financially. If we were to go to just a blank 6 or 7 acre park, you'd be looking at at least 2.5 times the cost of the proposed project. So the mix of the infrastructure at Frame Park and the potential economic development around it are why this public-private partnership works, in our opinion.
Well, at $4.5 million, everything has costs. So my next question is, I guess maybe to the Common Council, if we could find another place, would people in the city consider putting that up? Because we really need to have some choices here. It's obvious that people have come here because they're not minding baseball, as you've heard before, but this is really not the place to do it. We love our parks. They don't put a baseball park at Lakefront in Milwaukee for a number of reasons. They have it a place where there's a lot of space, a lot of parking, those type of places. This is really not the place for our small town to have it. So I want to see if we can possibly have another consideration on the table, proposal to have it somewhere else. Let's look at it then and give us some choices. At this point, we don't have a choice. It's being told that this is the place. Let's have some choices. Thank you.
Sharon Wardman.
Good evening. Glad to see everybody here yet. It's late. I live at 810 Riverwalk in an apartment right across from Bethesda Park. Beautiful. But I have gone for the past 30 years to Frame Park, and I enjoy the tranquility of it. Like everybody else here, I think that this is not the place for it. I know I go probably to Frame Park at least, I'd say at least 3 or 4 times a month. I don't have little children. I have a dog. A dog can't go to Frame Park, so I have to go to Bethesda Park or Manuka. But my question is basically, putting this at Frame Park, I was told or heard that this would help the economy of downtown Waukesha. I don't see that because I go through downtown Waukesha Main Street every day of the week because I live on the west side right at the end of Main Street. So I don't see how this is going to help downtown with parking because you can't get parking half the time now. The street is narrow. You got parallel parking, you got vertical parking. They're building the apartment complex is going to have their own parking underground. But anyway, that's one of the reasons I'm against Frame Park. The congestion it's not going to bring people downtown at all from what I see. I have tons of friends. I'm in 5 or 6 social groups that are in Lake Country, Milwaukee, Mequon, that I deal with all the time. They will not come to Waukesha because of the parking. Even some of them, like some of the little shops, boutiques, they won't come here. So that's one point. The other point is I will be limiting my use to Frame Park just for the reason that the baseball diamond's going to be busy every day of the week. And that's too many people. Like somebody said about the Riverwalk, I come to that, yes. I walk from home to go to the Riverwalk because there is no place to park. The other thing is, are we going to have an option as the taxpayers of Waukesha to vote on this? Are we going to have a referendum so we know exactly how many people really approve of this at Frame Park? I'd love to see it at Saratoga, or I'd like to see it on 164. I would come to a few baseball games. My grandkids love them, but not at Frame Park. that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
So I think on the question regarding downtown businesses, I don't think we've made any claims that we would make parking better for downtown businesses.
No.
It was one thing I've heard. As far as business to those places, though, I think the best comparison we have is our operation at Bree Stevens Field in downtown Madison. And we know and work with the restaurant and bar owners within about a mile radius of that facility. And we've been operating events at that facility for about a little bit over 2 years now. And they're reporting back to us saying that they're not only having good business, they're having record days on days that we have events at that facility. And that's within up to a mile radius around that facility. And so we do have a history of developing business pre and post event with events that we do in other facilities around the state, and it is something we think that we can bring to Frame Park and hopefully work in a very positive manner with downtown businesses.
Well, I think you can do that, but people will have to stay where they're parked and on the street or wherever you're proposing for them to park and then walk there. I don't think it's going to bring as much revitalization as the city hopes it will. That's my own thought, just from living here 30 years and seeing the rehab they just did to downtown with all these changes in the last 5-10 years, and it really hasn't improved businesses. So that's my thought on it, and I would like to see this go to a vote for a referendum vote, so all the people in Waukesha could participate. A little facility like this is not going to hold enough people. I almost didn't come tonight because I knew I'd have to get here very early to get a parking spot, which is, I don't mind walking. But if it was going to rain out, I didn't want to walk in the rain because I am getting older, but I still use the parks. Thank you.
Okay, I have no one else signed up to speak.
I just want to say thank you all for coming. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. We really appreciate it. Appreciate the time. It was a very long night. We're continuing to provide more information. Go to the city website. We'll add additional information onto there. And then go to the additional public information meetings as well. So thank you.